Welcome one and all. It's time to deeply probe the tactical intricacies of firing 3 organ guns into the enemy. So, the old world, Warhammer, Bugman's big brewery bash at the TSN Arena in Nottingham. This tournament literally just finished. I just hopped on the tram, went home, and immediately started setting up this live stream to bring it while it's still hot and steaming fresh out of the oven on this very hot day. So you can immediately see that we have the mighty triple organ gun in the thumbnail there. One from each era, so we've got the new plastic one in the middle. On the left we have the 90s organ gun, and on the right we have the 80s organ gun with all the spikes on it, without the scythes. I do have the scythes, but I thought it wasn't very practical to actually put them on because they stick out too much. So maybe they'll be attached one day, but for now, unnecessary. So, let's dive in, shall we? There is the entire list that I'm taking to this 2,000 point 5-round event, and it's not an ultimate gunline because there are some fighter units in there as well. So you'll notice immediately that if you watched my battle report yesterday, this is very similar because that was kind of a warm-up to this list before the organ gun was ready. So from that list, the cannon has come out and replaced with a 3rd organ gun. So I'll go through the heroes first of all. So we've got an engineer up there, who is a naked engineer, doesn't have any upgrades at all, kept him as cheap as possible, no handgun because I always roll a 1 when firing it, and he's going to be hanging around with the organ guns and re-rolling one of the misfires that they'll probably roll per turn. On average, with the 6 artillery dice you're going to be using, you're going to have 1 misfire. So he's just there to re-roll that. And then when the final organ gun comes around to shooting, if I haven't rolled any misfires yet and it rolls a 2, for example, then I'll probably re-roll that. Then we've got a king who, for the purposes of this photo, is perched in with the iron breakers because that's where they spent most of their time. And there's the king in the middle there. He's not actually on an oath stone, just the model has one, so he's got full plate armor, a shield. I've also given him various upgrades in runic form. So he has been given the armor runes of 2 runes of shielding, so he's got 5+ ward save as well. And then the weapon runes, he has been given 1 rune of might to give him additional strength, up to strength 5. So for chewing through those grindy combats against toughness 3 units, he's going to be wounding them on 2s, which is a nice boost. And he also has the Master Rune of Alaric the Mad, which denies armor saves against his attacks. So he's going to be pretty tasty. Then we have got a runesmith. The runesmith you can see perched on this end of the iron breakers there. And the runesmith has full plate armor, shield, and has 3 talismanic runes. All of them are runes of spell breaking, so 3 of those, and single use, 3 runes of spell breaking. You can use it instead of a dispel attempt. You just automatically dispel the spell with no dispel roll required. So 3 of those, so all you have to do, get them into range to use it, and you can shut down 3 spells. I'm not expecting to stop any more spells than that, so I'm going to be paying close attention to which spells my opponent rolls, and then figure out which ones I really need to stop and which ones are going to be crucial at any given time. So for example, anything that's going to give extra movement to things to maybe get them into a really annoying position, or anything that plops a giant vortex in front of my war machines so they can't see anything, I'd be looking to auto-dispel those if the opportunity comes up. Or maybe anything that's going to reduce my armor saves or toughness perhaps, which are things that dwarves rely on heavily, so I'll be looking out for those spells. And letting things like fireballs mostly just happen, or just try and dispel them the old-fashioned way. Which is unlikely to work because most people are taking level 4s because of the vast amount of points you can spend on heroes in the old world. We've got Mad Flail and Giovanni in the chat. Yep, triple organ gun, reigning supreme. So let's see what else we've got here. Into the Thane. You can see the BSB on the end there, who doesn't have too many upgrades, just has a shield to go with the full plate armor. Nothing fancy at all, no runes, just in there for the rerolls and for the extra combat resolution. Then, into the core, we've got 18 dwarf warriors with hand weapon and shield. There they are. So sometimes there will be a character in with them, depending on deployment and what role they want to have. So for example, if I need a unit that's going to be a little bit more killy, I can put a runesmith in with them to give them armor bane, and flaming attacks, or I can put a king in with them, just to give them someone in there who can actually fight a bit. Yeah, so it depends on where they're positioned, and maybe even sometimes the BSB if I need to spread the BSB love around a bit, and maybe the warriors are positioned more centrally with other units on either side of them, and then based on where my opponent puts things, I would then think, actually, I need the BSB a bit closer to this side because the units over there are under more threat, so maybe I'd put the BSB in with them sometimes. Got 16 rangers, often going to be deployed this way, so they can be open order or skirmish. So open order is going to be the usual when I'm against fighty armies, and against shooting they may well pop down in skirmish formation for the -1 to hit against them. But open order I like, because then medium to weak units that charge them are just going to get slaughtered by them, because they have a good stand and shoot, which they can also use their throwing axes for if the enemy are at point blank range, but the crossbows are better. And then they've got great weapons, so if they do get charged, they are going to kick some serious butt. They also have shields, so that when they're being shot, they have a 4-up save, which is nice as well. And they can scout, of course, so they can just appear wherever you want, 12 inches away from the enemy. So often I put them in front of the enemy lines, but we're going to look at some options with them and maybe try out some different things with them in this event as well. I'm keeping my options open. We've got 5 Thunderers just to make up the rest of the core requirements, so exactly 500 points of core. And then in the special section, we've got a gyrocopter with the steam gun, just standard gyro, nothing too exciting going on there. 16 Iron Breakers, who are usually going to have my heroes in there. And Iron Breakers are pretty tasty, they've got a good save. I've given them the banner of the Rune of Confusion on their banner, which means that if you charge them in the front, then you don't get your initiative bonus because you make a disordered charge. So when the king's in there, he's initiative 4. So there's a decent chance if you charge this unit in the front, the king will get to hit before some of your stuff, especially if you have great weapons and you were relying on your charge bonus to be going first. Against the likes of Elves, it shouldn't make too much difference, but against like Tomb Kings, who are going to have very low initiative, then even when they charge me, I'm likely to go first with many of the characters in there, if not the Iron Breakers themselves as well. Then we have got 10 Miners, so controversial inclusion in the list, and they're in there purely because this isn't a particularly long-range list. So I need something to threaten the other side of the table sometimes, and the miners aren't too expensive, 138 points for 10 of them. They don't have a steam drill, because I need to shave the points off somewhere, and I thought that was an efficient place to do it. I can't take away any of the core, because I'm already at the limit. I feel like I need the engineer. I want that number of Iron Drakes. I can't really drop anything else anywhere, as far as I can tell, because I also want to have the rune on the Rangers, which I didn't mention, which makes them immune to fear and terror, because they're quite often going to be out on their own looking at monsters, so anything that charges them, they don't want to have to take that test, they just want to auto-pass it, so they don't have to run away. And there's the miners. So if I come up against a gun line, they'll be able to come in and threaten some of that, hopefully, and otherwise I'll just look for strategically where they need to be on the table, where I need extra bodies, so I can thrust them in there. Then we've got 7 Iron Drakes with a torpedo. This is the size that allows me to fit into the rare section with the 3 organ guns, because it's very congested in that section of the army list. So a 7 Iron Drake unit with the torpedo. Can't afford Cinderblast bombs, sadly. There are several upgrades that I would have liked to have taken on these units, but it's very tight for points, this list. And if I start tinkering with it at all, I'm going to have to take huge swathes of it out and start again. Then the triple organ gun, obviously. So 30-inch range, strength 5, very nice, very good against heavily armoured targets with AP 1, Armour Bane 2 with a lot of shots. And against any toughness 3 things, they're going to be wounding on 2s, so that's very nice. And what I especially like is having 1 organ gun from each of the eras. Don't want to have 2 of the same model. So a few close-ups of the army now, because if I'm going to spend all these hours painting it, you're going to have to spend a few seconds looking at it as well. Is that a hair in the shot on Bugman's Rangers? It certainly is. Look at that. Iron Drakes there. Gyrocopter focusing on the highlights. And there's the highlight of the army, definitely. 3 organ guns. People are going to be terrified of these, with the engineer there as well, making them more reliable. The organ gun, of course, is one of the least likely war machines in Warhammer to blow itself up. Of the machines that can blow up, because you're rolling 2 artillery dice and need 2 of them to fail. in order for you to have a chance of blowing up, and then it's only a 1 in 6 chance on the table as well. So very unlikely to blow up compared to a cannon, which is much more likely, and even a volley gun, because that only needs to have 2 misfires out of its 3 dice. So even though it gets more shots, it's more likely to roll a double misfire. So possibly my favourite model of all time is the 90s era organ gun. I think they have a very characterful crew. And there is the 80s organ gun that I just finished painting. So, first game, open battle. Up against dwarves! So it's a mirror match immediately. Not an identical list though. So, let's go through... I'll go back to my deployment in a minute, but let's have a look at what's in the opposing army. So we've got a unit of rangers. There are 2 units of rangers actually, so one of them is in the rare section. And one of them is in core. So the one in core has 18 rangers with all the upgrades, just like mine. Full command and great weapons, heavy armor, crossbows, throwing axes and shields. So all the cool stuff. And the one in rare section is the same, except there's 16 of them, not 18. Then we have got the unit of longbeards. That is 10 of them. They're drilled. They have great weapons, heavy armor, full command. They've got Rune of Confusion, like my Iron Breakers, so no initiative bonus if you charge them in the front. And I don't know if it's an optimal choice on the great weapon wielding Longbeards, but if they're going to be joined by this king, then it certainly starts to look a bit more tempting, because obviously they're initiative 1 with their great weapons, so the king is definitely going to have a chance of going first when he's with them. So the king, let's have a look at what this king is wielding. So obviously you can tell there are shield bearers, which means that the king gains extra wounds, which is very nice. There's a great weapon, shield bearers, rune of preservation, 2 times rune of shielding, so 5 up ward, just like mine. Also has the rune of Alaric the Mad, which is no armor saves, and the rune of swiftness, which is +1 initiative. So an initiative 5 king on shield bearers, so if you charge that unit, king's probably going to go first against almost everything. Sliding on down, we've got the Anvil of Doom, very small anvil. And obviously that's going to be a threat with its magic missile and buffing up the armor saves of the surrounding units. There's a unit of hammerers here, and there are 10 of those, and they've got full command and drilled. And they have the Master Rune of Hesitation, which means that you can't use your special rules for charging. So you don't count as charging when you charge them, which synergizes well with what the hammers already have, which is when they get charged, they get an extra attack and +1 to their initiative. So when you're charging them, you can't use lances, you don't get impact hits or any of that stuff. Then there's some more rangers. There's a bolt thrower as well, which has the rune of skewering, so it's up to strength 7 and doesn't allow armor saves, so that's very scary, of course. And if we go back to the wide shot, so I've got my rangers out on this side. My opponent elected to deploy both units of rangers in the deployment zone, was obviously so terrified of the organ guns that putting them out on my side of the table was deemed an unwise strategy. I've put my rangers in skirmish formation. They just happen to be touching because they're on movement trays, but they are skirmishing, and the gyrocopter behind. They are put there to counter the enemy rangers here, and the iron drakes as well, so when they move up they'll be able to shoot and hit them because they're on the hill, so I can see them over my own troops. I've got my 2 combat units either side of the triple organ gun barrage ready to unload on some of that stuff. It's going to be hard to hit because the Anvil of Doom is in the woods, so it's going to be difficult to shoot that. The bolt thrower is quite far away as well, but could be an option. The rangers are skirmishers, and this unit up here, I think they may well be in range as well. And yeah, so we're both quite confident in our shooting abilities. Triple organ gun, rangers, iron drakes, thunderers versus 2 lots of rangers, a bolt thrower and a magic missile. I think I've got the shooting edge, so I'm not going to be too aggressive here. Even though I feel like if I go forward, I could win fights against this list. Because my combat units are quite scary compared to the smaller units I'm up against. The Iron Breakers anyway, with the characters in. Not so sure about the hand weapon and shield warriors, they could probably have a good go at the rangers who are only skirmishers, so I'd be going first against them and they would form up aligned to me, so they wouldn't get lots of attacks back at me if I killed a few. So I'm not too eager to go out though, even though I think my Ironbreakers would do well in any of these fights, because as soon as I go forward, suddenly I'm inviting concentrated fire. So if my Ironbreakers were to walk out into here, not only are they walking straight towards dangerous terrain where the anvil is, they're going to get magic missile, they're going to get shot with crossbows from both sides, and a bolt thrower, which could potentially pierce the ranks and hit 4 of them at once. So I'm not going to be overly aggressive, I'm just going to try and reign supreme with my shooting, and then the enemy, who will then be down on points, will then have to think about, do I push forward and attack, or do I just stand back and accept a small to medium loss? So that's the plan. And let's... oh, I've got the miners lurking in reserve as well. So Giovanni believes that I'm going to win the first game. Let's find out. We've got my fellow Andy in the chat there, who is watching. Yes, that is true. And we've got a dancer who says the banner that prevents lances, etc. doesn't remove initiative. That is correct. The banner of confusion removes initiative, and the banner of hesitation removes lances and impact hits. So you just don't count as charging, but you would still get your initiative bonus. Whereas the confusion means you don't get your initiative bonus, but you still get to use lances. So this opposing army has one of each. I've only got the one that removes the initiative bonus on my Ironbreakers. So let's go in. We've got a nice cinematic shot over the top of the weaponry. Turn 1 goes to the enemy. So there's not much of an advance, but there is going to be some shooting. The anvil puts its rune to boost the armor save of the hammerers. And you can see that there are... did I even mention the heroes that are in the hammerer unit there? So because they're just tacked on the end, I forgot they existed. So there is a rune lord in there. And who else? There's a Thane as well. That's the BSB. So there's a BSB in there and a Thane. A Thane and a runesmith. So because there is a hero in with the hammerers, a Thane or a king, they can issue or accept challenges on behalf of that hero. So not much is accomplished here. There is going to be some shooting. The gyrocopter is immediately killed. So the gyrocopter was here, it was gunned down mercilessly, and I lost 1 ranger from shooting as well, and 1 Ironbreaker. I think the bolt thrower did that one. And turn 1 for me. So I've lost 1 unit. I'm going to start blasting away at these rangers. So I should have the slight edge if I shoot ranger to ranger first, because I'm taking the first crack at actually shooting at the rangers, and they're both skirmishing. So if I can kill a few, the opponent is then down when they shoot back at you, so you should maintain the edge, and the Iron Drakes behind can help as well when they get to within range. So I don't do too much though, don't kill many of them, and the organ guns whittle away this unit of Longbeards. They kill 4 of them it looks like, and I think I only got 1 ranger, which was very disappointing with my rangers. The Longbeards have been whittled down, so there's the casualty pile, and that's it for the first turn. So not too effective. Organ guns don't do a great deal, just 4 dead models. My hand weapon and shield warriors do move up a bit, in case anything wants to advance down here and fight them, but it doesn't seem likely at the moment. They don't seem too eager to engage these units here. So, into the opposing turn, and the Longbeards have their armour buffed up by the anvil, and if I use the swirly side of the token, my opponent didn't have any tokens, so I just passed over one of mine. So if it's the swirly side, it means it's the extra fancy version of the buff, where they get +1 to save and reroll saves, and if it's the skull, it means they just get to reroll. They have got improved armour at the moment. And what's going on here? Loads of my rangers get killed. So look how many there were. Loads of rangers. Now there are not a lot of rangers, and they're running away. So just an incredible round of shooting from the rangers on the hill. Firing back at them earlier, I only killed 1, and now they've killed... how many is even left? There's 7 left. And I lost 1 in the first round. So that's 8. So they shot down 8, those rangers, in this turn. So an obscenely good roll for them, compared to my measly 1 that I was able to kill. So that's not too great. Ruggy says, I've really enjoyed these battle reports. It's got me to think more on how I play. I've been quite enjoying 2 to 3 gyrocopters. Yes, well, apparently the dwarves are not far away from being unleashed onto the world again in terms of ordering them from GW. So there are going to be more gyrocopters added from the Gyrocopter Fund, which is funded mostly by people donating to this channel via Patreon or PayPal. So at the moment, the Gyrocopter Fund is ready to go. So anything else that goes in there will be used for additional gyrocopters and slayers, probably. And tournament tickets, obviously. So the Anvil of Doom puts a wound onto an organ gun, which is quite scary because it can reach out and touch them with that 27-inch range. And yes, so of course I have the option, because it's only a 27-inch magic missile, of putting the organ guns out of range of the anvil. But if I were to do that, then the issue I have is that I'm quite far back with limited lines of sight, because I couldn't fit them all on the edge of the woods down here, and I'd be out of range of some of the other juicy stuff. Let's see. Ed says, the plastic gyrocopters are actually in stock on GW site. Problem is a deep love for the older metal ones. Are they actually in stock at the moment? Last time I looked, they weren't available. And no other stores had them available either. So I'll have to have another look if they are. Because that would save a bit of time, wouldn't it, if I could just order some now. And I've been keeping an eye on Element Games in particular, because I think I've got a voucher for them. Or store credit or something. Yeah, because there was store credit because I think I cancelled an order because one of the items in it was out of stock when I ordered it. Something along those lines. So I've got store credit with Element Games, I think. So I've been keeping an eye on their shop mostly. But yes, if they've got gyrocopters again, I'll be diving straight on that. And there we go. So we've got a wounded organ gun, which is down to 1 wound now. I think the bolt thrower took a wound. No, the bolt thrower couldn't have just taken 1 wound because it's damaged 2. It must have been the crossbows, because a few of them are able to shoot the organ gun from there, and they did 1 wound to it. On to turn 2 for the good dwarves, not the evil ones, and the rangers fail their leadership test and just keep on running away. So the Iron Drakes step up, move up, and take some shots. The organ guns start blasting and completely obliterate the rest of the Longbeards, so it's just the king on his own. So that's 1 unit murdered. And the king, vulnerable out in the open, and start blasting away at him now. The miners do not come in yet, unfortunately. Where would I have brought them in had they come in now? Well, this side doesn't seem to be going too well because my rangers are running away, so maybe I could bring them in over here and threaten to attack the rangers on the hill. They would still be able to shoot me first, and miners don't have very good armour, so maybe that wouldn't be the best place to go. Maybe down here to attack the anvil, to stop it doing its spells. Miners versus anvil, would that go well? 10 miners. The anvil would be striking first, usually, and it's got decent attack profile, the anvil, so it could kill a few. They would tie it up. I don't know whether they would ultimately kill it. They would have a chance, definitely. So no miners yet, and there we go, cleared out 1 unit, a few more casualties sprinkled around, but neither of us are that eager to advance. At this stage, I'm thinking, it's very close, this game, and the gyrocopter's dead, the rangers are running away. They'll come back though. I've killed the Longbeards. I should be able to kill the king if he's out in the open and he doesn't run and hide. So I'm still feeling pretty good about my shooting because all the organ guns are still up. If the organ guns started dropping, I would really consider going into marching column and advancing up the iron breakers just to try and kill something. Because the shooting hasn't been that potent so far. Turn 3 for the evil dwarves, and the king is just running away a bit, out of range of one of the organ guns, I think. And the Iron Drakes take a couple of casualties from the rangers. The bolt thrower skewers a couple of iron breakers, which is sad. And that's about it. The anvil doesn't do anything successfully this turn apart from keep the king's armor save boosted. And turn 3 for me. So the rangers finally turn round and we can start shooting away. The organ guns can keep blasting. Put 5 wounds onto the king with all that shooting, so he's got 1 wound left. So if I was this king, I'd be strongly considering trying to get behind this hill and just hide out the rest of the game now to preserve your points, because with only 1 wound left, he's certainly going to get killed. Turn 4 for the enemy, so let's see if the king hides. Well, he only gets the lower buff applied to his armour, this king, from the anvil. So he's a bit vulnerable. He decides that he's going to not run away, though. He's kind of going in this direction. He's trying to get out of range of the organ guns, I think. The Iron Drakes take some more casualties from the Rangers, though, which is sad. And the king makes it all the way to here. I think this is with assistance from the anvil's conveyance rune that gives him an extra move, just getting out of range of another organ gun. The bolt thrower finishes off one of the organ guns. So the bolt thrower being quite reliable here, because of course you have to remember it's long range and they're in the woods. So you have to get a decent roll to hit that. Turn 4 for me. The Iron Drakes are going to blast the king. The Rangers that can see him are going to blast the king. And the organ gun that's in range is going to blast the king. And as a result of that, they do nothing. The king does not suffer a single wound in that turn from all that shooting. The other organ gun, I don't believe it does anything. It tries to shoot at one of these units over here, but doesn't do anything successfully. And in the enemy turn, the Rangers shoot down a couple more Iron Drakes, and one of them is just running away on its own now. And into my turn 5. So yeah, we're just taking turns shooting at each other without much effect. Not a lot has died. So, turn 5 for me. The Rangers shooting, and the organ gun shooting. And it gets 18 shots as well. Again, can't put a single wound onto a king. So he's been on 1 wound for 2 turns, has taken a full batch of shooting from multiple units, and hasn't taken another wound since then. So that 5-up ward save has really been saving his behind. The other organ gun puts 2 wounds onto the bolt thrower, so the bolt thrower is almost dead. And the miners come in this time, and they advance towards the Anvil of Doom. So I think I'm playing miners wrong at this point, because there's various rules on reinforcements, and as far as I could tell, there isn't an actual section in the rulebook called reinforcements that you can just find from the index. So, because of this incomplete knowledge of the rules, I've been bringing them on and then marching them, which I don't think you're allowed to do, unless ambushers have some special rule as well that says they can march. And also in one of the other games, because I couldn't specifically find a section that said you have to have your back to the edge of the table, then I brought a unit in with its side onto the table, because I could only find a passage in the rules that said you have to be touching the table edge. Later on in the day, I did find one that says it has to be the back of the unit that's touching the edge. So you can't do that either. But the rulebook is not very well laid out. You have to jump across sections, and in fact I never even found that part in the rulebook. I still don't know where that is. I found the bit about having the back of the unit against the edge in the Old World Builder that has all the rules on the app. So yes, it should be, all the rules you need should just be clearly listed in the section for that rule. You shouldn't have to jump around between pages to find it. And if they do direct you to a new page, they should tell you which page number it is you should be going to. And they tend not to do that either. It'll just say, for example, a unit is coming in with ambushing, they follow the rules for reinforcements, for example, it might say that, but it doesn't then tell you often which page to jump to reinforcements. And yeah, it should just tell you where all the rules are if they're not presenting you with all of them on the page. I think they've tried so hard to avoid repeating any of the rules that they're just all over the place. So it takes a lot of games and a lot of reading of the rules repeatedly, and still, even now, even though I know that's the rule, I haven't found it in the book yet, about having your back to the edge. But that is the rule. So that's being played incorrectly at the moment, so that should cut down. Actually, I shouldn't even point out when I play the rules wrong, because it generates so many extra comments that it probably bumps my video up in the engagement ratings. So I hope everyone's going to donate extra comments for me being so nice and actually telling you when I know the rules are wrong and not just trying to bait you into commenting with outrage. Yes, you do have to be 8 inches away when you come in. So Ed says you can move and then throw blasting charges. Yeah, so that is a good option with the miners. That's something to look into with them. The king is moving again, trying to get out of range of more weapons. But again, not hiding behind the hill, just moving along the front, which I think is a risk. So, my turn now. So I'm going to be able to charge the anvil with my miners. I'm going to do more shooting into the king. And yeah, I don't kill him because I fire a million more shots into him and can't take the final wound. So while on 5 wounds, he has faced 3 full rounds of these rangers, at least 2 rounds of this organ gun, probably this organ gun as well once, and iron drakes as well while they were still here. So those iron drakes are fleeing off the table, so they're going to score some points for my opponent, but very little has died, and that's the end of the game. So, what's dead? 1 organ gun and a gyrocopter, a unit of longbeards on the other side, and the iron drakes score a little bit because they're fleeing. So, we end up with a draw, because there's not enough points difference between the 2 scores to make it into a win for anybody. So, it's just 10-10. And considering both of our shooting phases just weren't that great, apart from the bolt thrower, which managed to hit into the woods at long range into an organ gun to finish it off, which was a great shot from the bolt thrower, who didn't die when I fired back at it with my organ gun, which is tough, obviously, because it's toughness 6 when you're shooting at it. And this king, if the king had died, I think that turns it into a very small win for me. But alas, the king did not die, so it's a draw. Looking back, would I have been better off just starting off in marching column with the Ironbreakers and just steaming across the table and trying to get into combat with something? Maybe. I think they would have a good chance at killing the anvil, but they'd have to go through difficult terrain to get there. That would be some good points, and then they may end up having to fight hammerers, which is risky because they're good. They've got some heroes in there as well. So, I don't know. I think if I started this game again now, I would probably do something very similar and just hope that my shooting had more success. On to the next game. The Mountain Pass. And this looks familiar. So if you saw my battle report yesterday, when I reported on my game from Thursday evening at the gaming club, then this is actually the same opponent, the same army, and the same mission, the same scenario that we played on Thursday as well, in round 2 of a tournament. So it's the ultimate grudge match. I won that game. It was fairly narrow. So we'll see if each of us have learned from that game. The difference, of course, now is that I have an organ gun in place of the cannon that I had for that game. So 3 organ guns staring down at the knights. And the knights have wisely deployed outside of 30 inches of the organ guns, so that if I'm going first, which I probably will be, because the Bretonnians often choose to give away the first turn so that they can get their ward saves with their prayer to the lady, then the only things I'm going to be able to shoot at are peasants. So I can kill loads of peasants. So, the Bretonnian list, let me go through it for you, for those of you that didn't see the battle report yesterday. There's some interesting stuff in there, and some stuff in there that's quite scary for my list as well. Some stuff that isn't scary at all. Because I've said many a time that knights are what I want to see with my dwarves, because iron drakes, thunderers, organ guns, that's just the dream for them. Because, especially knights of the realm that are only toughness 3, so I'm going to be wounding them on 2s and 3s with all my shooting, and they rely on their armour, so I can get through that with my decent AP on all my shooting. And then they're down to whichever knights have a ward save. That's what they're down to at the end. And there's not many of them, so as soon as you kill 2, suddenly it's a much weaker unit. So you like to see a lot of knights when you're playing with these kind of guns. Or very slow chaos warriors, who have lots of armour as well, who are just planning to walk across the table very slowly towards you. That's also something you'd like to see. So how I've deployed in this game... Actually, I haven't even gone through the list yet, have I? Let's have a look at the list first. Tell you about the Bretonnian list. So, there is, in terms of heroes, there's the Green Knight, who is 275 points, and hides in the woods. He's an ethereal knight that pops out and charges you, and you can only hurt with magical weapons or combat resolution. So, he has to come out of natural terrain which is the 2 woods. So he has to come out of one of those 2 places, but he doesn't have to be a certain distance away from you apart from 1 inch, and then he can immediately charge. So all the stuff I don't want to get hit by the Green Knight I've put on this side. So that's the 3 organ guns and the rangers. The things I don't care about being charged by a Green Knight include the Thunderers. There's only 5 of them and they're very cheap, so if he charges them he's kind of wasting his time. And then if he wants to come for the juicy things, like the organ guns that are going to be easy to kill, then I've got my Iron Breakers in the way, who have my king in there, who is the only thing in the army that can really hurt him. And they also have a huge static combat resolution, the Iron Breakers, because they've got the BSB in there as well and a load of ranks. So the Green Knight would not like to fight them. So hopefully, if he wants to come in and fight Thunderers, that's fine. If he wants to come in over there and be miles away from me, that's also fine. So that's my thinking with putting loads of stuff over there to deny the Green Knight any good options. There is a Duke on a Royal Pegasus, which is down here, hiding behind some Grail Knights. And what does the Duke have? The Seal of Paravon and Virtue of Knightly Temper. 405 points, it's got a decent amount of wounds, it's got some nice saves, and it's just a pretty good skirmish flying creature. There is a Prophetess, level 4 wizard, who is, I think, hiding here behind the men-at-arms. So she's level 4, she has the Ruby Ring of Ruin for some fireball, and the Illusion spell lore. There is a Paladin, who is the BSB, who is between 2 units of knights there. Between 2 units of Knights of the Realm, and the BSB doesn't have anything too fancy, it is only 82 points, so can't have taken anything too juicy, just there for rerolls and what have you. 2 units of Knights of the Realm with command, 5 knights in each, so they're not in the lance formation, they're just in standard flat formation. 20 peasant bowmen, 25 men-at-arms down here with a Grail monk and full command. 4 Pegasus Knights up there. And obviously all this was deployed before my Rangers went down. So as soon as I saw Pegasus Knights, I thought that's where I'm going to put my Rangers, because that's the last thing they want to fight. They don't have a huge amount of attacks, and they don't have a huge amount of wounds, so that is not a great matchup for the Pegasus Knights there. Then there are 5 Grail Knights, which I mentioned, which have Virtue of the Joust, which gives them some kind of reroll when they're using their lances, I think. So they're just better at fighting when they charge. So they're a very scary unit, but they're out of range of my shooting in the first round. As are all the knights, which is a very wise move. Either keeping them out of range or keeping them behind peasants is definitely a good idea. So my gyrocopter has a vanguard move and has moved up before the game. And we go across my lines, Thunderers on the hill. There is my little Death Star. Now until I go 6 wide, I can't fit all my characters on the front rank. So the BSB is currently in the 2nd rank, and I did find out actually that I haven't confirmed it because I haven't checked on it for myself in the rules, but I was told that any character in the 2nd rank, you can't actually use their special rules. So I will have to rethink the width of this unit going forward. Often when they're fighting, they do go a bit wider anyway, because they want to get more strikes in. Depends what they're fighting. There's the mighty 3 organ guns staring down the enemy. And isn't that a terrifying sight as knights? And look at the evolution of the organ gun. So we start at this end when it's very spiky, and it doesn't look that practical because it looks like some of the barrels are just going to shoot these spikes right in front of them. Then we move down to this one where the barrels get significantly smaller, which makes sense because when this one was around, the rules for the organ gun were that it was just 5 cannons basically strapped together, and you could choose how many to fire at once, I'm pretty sure. So then it went down to this one, and I think when this model came in is when it had more familiar rules to the situation now, where it's just a large number of shots with something that's not quite as good as a cannon. I believe that was when this model came in. I don't know if it coincided with the model's release or not, but it would have been around about the same era. And then this one came around later, which, when was this one released? It would it have been like 2008, 9, sometime around there? Because it was already around when they did the last batch of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition dwarf releases, which contained the Iron Drakes. This was already a thing by then, this plastic one. So, pretty sure it was before that. And at that point, they've made the barrels much bigger. It just looks much bigger, and I would almost say more cartoonish, but this one does look quite silly with all the spikes on it as well. But they all just look really cool. I especially like the central one from the 90s. It's a bit more understated, but the wheels are the cool spoked ones, and I just think it looks very nice and pleasant, and the crew, some of my favourite models as well. Then the Dwarf Warriors and the Rangers. So the Rangers have been put down on this side specifically to match up against the Pegasus Knights, because I think that's a really good matchup. Miners in reserve. So there's the enemy forces as described, and turn 1 for me first. The Bretonnians choose to give it away, as they often do. So I can't get into range to flame anyone in the first turn. So I also don't want to move up and get immediately easily charged by knights with the gyrocopter. So I've moved up so that they may well charge me, but I've got a good chance to flee and not be caught. So the organ guns start blasting and whittle down a serious number of peasants. The Rangers start blasting and whittle down a serious number of peasant archers, who then fall back in good order off the hill into the dangerous terrain. So they've taken quite a few casualties. So we've really taken it out on the peasantry, who are the only ones in shooting range in the first round. And in my opponent's first turn, you can see that the Grail Knights declare a charge into the gyrocopter, who flees. The Pegasus Knights decide, you know what, I don't care if it's a bad matchup, I'm going to charge into the Rangers anyway, because we're Bretonnians, that's how confident we are. So in they go, and you can see that 2 wounds, I've made note of that, 2 wounds were done with the stand and shoot. So one of them is already dead. Doesn't bode well. The Grail Knights make their charge against the fleeing gyrocopter, so they don't successfully reach it. And oh yeah, here's a picture of the spells that I finally took. So there's Fireball from the Ruby Ring. There is Miasmic Mirage, which puts -2 modifier to movement and prevents the unit charging. There is Shimmering Dragon, which allows a unit to gain the Fly 10 special rule until the end of this turn, which is good. Gives the unit some extra speed. And it can only target friendly characters, though. Then, Confounding Convocation. So it remains in play, and while it's in play, enemy unit becomes subject to stupidity. So you can make units stupid, which dwarves aren't that worried about because they have high leadership. So overall, the worrying one would be making things fast, but there aren't really any friendly characters that would be too terrified of something that can fly 10, because most of them already can in this list. The Duke, who's the scary one, he can already fly. He's already pretty fast. I don't know if he's 10 or 9. Fireball is obviously vaguely scary to some units. And so, look at this. Tape measure action. Captured on camera. Very exciting. The archers move back up onto the hill, which makes them not very good at shooting. And they do kill 1 Dwarf Warrior, though. The Pegasus Knights lose the combat because they take another wound in combat, and the Miners win via having a musician, and then they fall back in good order. I choose not to go after them because I would rather either charge them fresh or shoot them, but I think I really just want to shoot them. Because if I was going to charge them, I'd be better off just following them after the combat. Although, with that said, so here's something to consider. When they go back, they can potentially go back like 6 inches or so. If I were to pursue them and only go, let's say 5 inches, I wouldn't be touching them and I'd be 1 inch away, meaning that a charge would only give me +1 initiative bonus. So that is something to factor in as well. So turn 2 for me, we're going to start blasting. The Iron Drakes and the Thunderers are shooting at the Duke because the Men-at-Arms flee because an organ gun kills a load of them, and they flee out of the way, so I can now shoot these characters without any cover. And the Lord has taken some, or the Duke, should I say, has taken some serious wounds. Then, yeah, so that's some serious punishment from the organ guns there, and the Rangers do attempt to charge, and the Pegasus Knights choose to flee. You can see that the Miners come in over here, and they move an illegal distance there because I'm not supposed to be marching. And the Archers are also fleeing because I did more wounds to them. Or maybe, actually, it could have been because the Pegasus Knights fled through them. I think that was it, and then they fled. So, the Duke is heavily wounded. the Grail Knights, I've parked my gyrocopter near them, which you can just about see there. That's to block them from charging over here. The Green Knight does turn up in the Bretonnian turn though, so he's going to have a go at charging the Thunderers or the Iron Drakes. If he charges the Iron Drakes, I'd be tempted to flee, but that's a bit risky. The Pegasus Knights rally, so do the Archers, and turn round. The Green Knight charges into the Thunderers, just some easy points for him there, he's going to be thinking. And the Grail Knights charge into the gyrocopter that was parked in their path because they have to get it out of the way before they can get to any of the juicy stuff, and I just sacrificed it so that they couldn't charge anything else yet. Keep them out of the game for the time being until I've got my organ guns ready to shoot them. So if they just kill my crummy little chaff units out here, like the gyrocopter and the Thunderers, and I've killed some knights and some peasants with my shooting, the Bretonnians are going to be behind, so they're going to have to come over here towards my organ gun encampment if they want to get more points. So that's the dream. The Duke is hiding behind Knights of the Realm now from the organ guns. And the Archers turn round and they kill a single miner with their bows. The Green Knight kills all but one Thunderer, who does not flee, which is nice, so the Green Knight's tied up for a turn. Because there's no point me shooting him anyway, because I can't hurt him. Turn 3, for me. What do the organ guns do this time? They kill a couple of knights, and the Iron Drakes put some wounds onto the wizard, the spellcaster, the prophetess. The Green Knight finishes off the Thunderer and now turns to face the Iron Drakes. The miners attempt to charge into the Archers, who flee as a reaction, and the miners go into the difficult terrain, but the Archers are on the run. And the Rangers shoot up the Pegasus Knights, so there's only one left now. So the Pegasus Knights, I think he's fleeing as well, so just one of them alive and is in flight, so he's going to need a pretty tasty roll to turn round. And you can see that my Iron Breakers have turned this way, so if the Green Knight starts coming over here, they can certainly cut him off with their combat resolution, and hopefully the King can give him a bit of a dwarven whomping as well with his hammer. The Dwarf Warriors that are kind of stuck and not involved in anything at the moment, they've turned and they're eager not to block the line of sight for the organ gun, but they are ready to come this way should anything charge the organ guns this turn. So turn 3 for Bretonnia. The Pegasus Knight, should I say, and the Archers continue fleeing, they do not rally. Miasmic Mirage is cast upon the Iron Drakes, so they have -2 to movement and can't charge anything. And I just don't think there are a lot of spell options, really. The Knights of the Realm charging the Iron Drakes, 3 of them, and I kill one with the stand and shoot. The other 2 make it in, and the Green Knight charges their flank. So that's quite a scary situation for the Iron Drakes to be in. The Prophetess moves up here to cast some spells at short range, but doesn't get much done yet. Combat resolution. Some of the Iron Drakes die. I do kill a Knight of the Realm in return. And the Iron Drakes, I think they just passed their leadership. So they just gave ground a little bit. Which means... Okay, here is an example of drilled about to be used. So, with the drilled rule, you can expand your front rank by up to 5, I think. And we've got Peter who caught this stream live again. Yes, you did. So, we're about to see drilled in action. In a legal way as well. So, when you... Because I asked in the Old World, I think Old World Dwarven... It's just in the Old World group I asked about this. It wasn't the Dwarven one. Just Warhammer the Old World Facebook group. Because some people were saying that when you're drilled, you can expand your ranks, and then if you can then see something as a result of that, you can then charge it. So some people were arguing it one way, some people the other, and obviously the way the rulebook's laid out, you can't just read through all the rules for it in one place. You've got to jump around a bit. So I asked in that Facebook group, and the consensus is that because of the sequencing, you declare the charge first, so you have to be able to see it at the point that you're declaring the charge. The confusion on my part and some people's part as well is because when you're in marching column, you can't normally charge anything, but you can still declare a charge against something you can see because your rules would then allow you to charge it because you're drilled. However, The fact that you can't see something means that you just can't declare the charge at all, even if the rule of drilled would allow you to be big enough to then see it. You can't do it because you have to see it first before you decide you're charging. So before you get to use any of your rules for expanding or any of that madness, you have to see it first. So here, the dwarves can clearly see the Knight of the Realm. They can add to their frontage, which is going to make the charge possible, because as it is here, they would just hit the Iron Drake first, but they can go wider, meaning they can move forward and plonk into that knight first, which means it's going to be a fun time to be a dwarf, because they're about to kill a Knight of the Realm. So, here we go. In my turn, and oh, by the way, you see where the Duke ended up over there in this turn for the Bretonnians. He decided to fly all the way up there, and he's going to take one turn of shooting and then try and charge something. He can't be charged by the warriors. So let's see what happens. I get him down to 1 wound with the organ guns, which is a running theme with this list. Shoot up big scary things, but leave them on 1 wound. The Ironbreakers get into the flank of the Knight of the Realm, and the reason this is so significant is because this is all one big combat now. So when the Ironbreakers get in there, this means the Green Knight is subject to the combat resolution of the entire combat. Now, if there's a reason that isn't the case, that's in the rules somewhere hiding, let me know right now. Because my understanding is when I charge into that knight, this is all one combat, so the total combat resolution is added up because the Iron Drakes are fighting both units. So then whatever combat resolution happens against the knight also happens against the Green Knight. So the total combat res kills the Green Knight. And the Knight of the Realm is dead as well. Let's see. Scott says, pretty sure the arc you need to make contact with is determined when you declare your charge. So by the looks of it, you're in the front of that knight, so they wouldn't have been able to hit that flank. Ooh, so that's interesting then. So let's go back and have a look to see if it is actually legal. So, is that in the flank of the knight? Or the front? Yes, so you may well be right there. So that's another thing that's to consider as well. So, when you're declaring it, if you have to declare that you're hitting a particular facing, you then can't expand to go into a different facing, so that does change the situation. Yeah, so that is important. That is very good to know going forward. So, in this situation, had the Ironbreakers obviously been, like here, they could do the same thing. But, as it stands with drilled, apparently, so what you have to do is declare the facing that you're going to be charging, and then when you expand, you still have to get to the original facing. Which is very strange, because it might be difficult to reach that facing once you've expanded, which is how you could screw yourself over. Let's see. Yes, that is a very legitimate point, Gilthos. You could reduce your files by 1 and charge the Green Knight in the corner as well. Yes, so in this instance, it's not a big deal, because it could have, the same thing would have been achieved here, and would have won the combat resolution by 1,000,000 as well. And yes, so we would have knocked off a rank, which would have put the Runesmith probably into a back rank, been 4 wide, and then charged the front of the Green Knight, who's poking out over the edge a bit because he's a little bit wider than the Iron Drakes. Oh yes, would that put me into marching column? Let's find out. So, it'd be 4 wide, and actually, no, I couldn't do it anyway because there's a unit right behind them, so I couldn't do that. So, here's another point. With marching column, can you take one rank, one line away and add it to the other side? I think it says add or reduce. I don't think you can do both in one. I don't think you can just shift your ranks around like that. Now, maybe they could actually make the charge into the Green Knight regardless. Let's see, Scott says, page 127, the arc you hit is determined when you declare charge. Okay, so that's important then. So maybe, because obviously this base is empty, so they would have to wheel a bit there, wheel a bit again, and then go forward. So I think theoretically they could make this charge still, potentially into the Green Knight. So if we were playing it correctly, maybe that's what should have been attempted here. Can you redress to remove 2 from one side and add 2 to another side? I'm not sure about that. I'm going to suggest that you can't do it because it says, let's have a look. I'm going to have a look at the rule for drilled here. Let's pull this up. So, grinding the video to a halt for a second to see if this is possible. So, drilled may perform a free redress the ranks maneuver. So, let's have a look at redress the ranks. By moving models to or from their rear ranks to decrease or increase the number of models in their front rank. I don't know. Gilthar says you only get one wheel on the charge. Yes, so you wouldn't be able to do the double wheelie in there to get the Green Knight that way. So I don't know if that's abundantly clear, whether you can take models from one side and put them on the other. Yeah, so I don't think that's clear in the rules. I don't even know if it's clear whether it's intended that you are able to do both. I've never actually done it, so I've not broken any rules that way. But it might actually be doable, that. It just says you can move models to or from the rear ranks to decrease or increase the number of models in the front rank. So, I'd be moving 4 models from the back rank over to this rank, and then move 3 models from here into the back rank. So I think technically that does follow the rules as written, unless there's another bit that I've missed. They have to maintain a correct formation, and there has to be the same number of models in each rank. So I think that would technically make it legal, by my reckoning. I could take 3 out of this rank, put them on this side, and then add those 3 to the back. And then charge the Green Knight. I don't see anything in there that suggests that's not possible, but I haven't looked up that specific thing in the FAQ. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anyone do that. I haven't done it yet. So I'll probably post in one of the Facebook groups if that's not clear by the end of this video, if someone doesn't clear that up with a page reference. So yes, blatantly illegal flank charge into the Bretonnian Knight when what they could have possibly done is redressed and charged the Green Knight. So the same thing may have been achieved. So I've killed the Green Knight and the Knight of the Realm. Then, also, the miners decide not to go after the peasants because they're still fleeing and I'd just be making dangerous terrain tests and they'd keep running from me. The rangers just spin round so they can shoot heavily restricted shooting at the Pegasus Duke. The Grail Knights, I think we're into the opposing turn now. So the Grail Knights on the hill. Hold on, where were the Grail Knights before? No, so they were already there. So we're still on my turn round up here. So the final knight actually just flees. I don't manage to kill the final Knight of the Realm with the Iron Drakes there. And... or is that from a different unit? Hold on just a second. Okay, so this is the situation we're in. That's clearly the knight there that's running away, isn't it? Yes, so I didn't even kill him. He ran away, and the Green Knight died from combat res. The Iron Drakes tried to pursue the Knight of the Realm, and they did not catch him. And that's that. So the Pegasus Knight's still running, the Peasant Bowmen are still running into the Bretonnian turn. And there are charges available. The Grail Knights could try and charge the Iron Breakers. The reason the Iron Breakers didn't want to pursue is because they would be opening up their flank to the Grail Knights, which is a bad idea. So, the Iron Drakes are... I think they suffer from stupidity now, which is quite funny. And we're going to get some charge action. So we have a charge. The skirmishing Duke on Pegasus is charging the flank of the Iron Breakers, and the Grail Knights are charging the front. So when you're charging Iron Breakers with units that are very good on the charge, you have to crack them first time, really. Because if you're using Lances, they've got, if you charge them in the front, they've got Shield Wall and Stubborn as well, so that they can use those two to fall back in good order and then just give ground. So when the combat continues, you then don't have your Lances anymore. So you've got to hit them hard and fast. And I can't see anything in... which rule is it? Is it stubborn? I think it's shield wall that's front specific. So let me have a look at how that's worded now. So, on a turn in which it was charged, a unit with a special rule, armed with shields. Actually, this one isn't to do with the front at all, shield wall, according to this. It was charged, a unit with a special rule that is arrayed in close order formation, that is equipped and chooses to use shields, may give ground rather than fall back in good order. And then stubborn allows you to automatically fall back in good order instead of taking the test, which you would then turn into a give ground with shield wall. And I haven't seen anything that suggests they can't be used together, because the shield wall doesn't specify that it's to do with a roll. It just says if you fall back in good order, you can turn that into a give ground, basically. We've got Lee in the chat. Good evening. So we're really diving deep into the intricacies of Drilled in this episode. So we may actually figure out all the rules and start playing it correctly at some point in the next 8 months. Until someone finds a passage hidden away in a different section of the book that just overrules everything else. So, maybe there's a secret, there's 2 pages that are actually stuck together and you have to hold it up to a light to see what's printed on them, to find out how Drilled actually works. So we've got the double charge here, so this is obviously quite scary. Grail Knights hit very hard. And the Duke's only on 1 wound, so he's less scary, but he can hit first, obviously. The Grail Knights won't get their initiative bonus, so they may possibly go the same time as the King. They seem like the kind of thing that would be about initiative 4. Is certainly going to be going before the horses, but maybe not before the knights. The Prophetess is trying to do some spells. I think that's it, really. Ruggy really enjoys the rule set, but the way the book was laid out is annoying. Yes, it definitely is. So I think the issue with it is that they don't want to repeat themselves in the rulebook, because it's already so massive. So what they probably should have done is put all the fluff and all the cool stuff in a separate book and had the rules just in a massive thick book that is allowed to occasionally repeat itself. And there are some rules where you need to have the same thing stated twice, otherwise you hop around the pages too much. Because there'll be a rule that then refers to another rule which has already been described. Even if it's only 1 sentence, it can't then give you that rule again because they refuse to repeat themselves. And sometimes they won't tell you which page to go to look for that either. So that is very annoying. So some of the apps are actually quite useful for putting in the word if you can't find it in the rulebook. The Old World Builder has the rules like that where you can search it by word, which is the only way I was able to find how reinforcements work. I can't even find those in the rulebook now. So we've got a challenge between a Grail Knight and the Iron Beard. Individual Grail Knights can issue or accept challenges in the way that Hammerers can when they have a Thane. So we've got 8 dead Ironbreakers, which is very painful. The champion is still alive in the challenge though, and I've killed a Grail Knight in response. And so being stubborn, of course, the Ironbreakers don't mind this at all, because they can just fall back and give in good order, which turns into give ground because of shield wall. So they survive the first round quite well. And then onto turn 5 for me. So we have another round of combat here, in which the Ironbreakers are fighting the Grail Knights, and the Duke has actually fled from this combat here, because the Ironbreakers win this time. So the Grail Knights are nowhere near as good when they're not charging, so they don't do as much. They only score 4 in combat there, so they only kill 1 Ironbreaker. The Ironbreakers have some good static combat resolution, and so it looks like I've got up to 7, so let's see, how do we arrive at that? We've got Close Order, Banner, the BSB, who technically I don't think should be allowed to confer his bonus because he's in the 2nd rank, but I wasn't aware of that at the time, so that is what's been counted. So we've got Close Order, Banner, BSB, rank, and what else? Where have I got 3 more from? Did I do some wounds, maybe? Oh, I see. It was in... I killed the Grail Knight in the challenge, so that gets some extra. And I may have, because it was the champion, he has 2 attacks, I may have actually killed him with both of the champion's attacks in the challenge. So that would be an extra 1 for overkill as well. So that would get an extra point. So it's probably about right. And the Duke flees as well. It still looks like it's 1 point out from my quick calculation, but there might be another one I'm not factoring in there. And the Grail Knights just fall back a bit, so I choose to go after them. The Duke flees a very long way away. And this single Knight of the Realm rallies successfully, so he gets a thumbs up. The Pegasus Knight does not rally and flees off the table. And the Peasant Bowmen get to right at the edge, but they're still fleeing. And the Duke, in the Bretonnian turn, hides behind this piece of terrain in the corpse pile. So if you put your corpse pile on the table and then you have to move in there, viewers may get confused if it's not explained to them clearly, like I'm explaining to you now. So he's alive, everyone else is dead, the Green Knight might come back to life, but it hasn't yet. So the BSB, who took some Iron Drake shots last turn, is hiding. The last Knight of the Realm is also hiding, so I can't kill both of them now. So the Iron Drakes are going to have to choose which one of those two to try and murder in the last turn. The Men-at-Arms are just chilling around here, and the Iron Breakers and the Grail Knights are still battling away. And turn 6 for me. So my final turn, you can see, there isn't really a wide shot, but up here at the back somewhere, the Duke with 1 wound left is hiding behind the terrain. So only the Rangers are going to be able to shoot him. The Iron Drakes are going to be able to shoot one of these dead. The Organ Guns are going to shoot the Bowmen, or the Men-at-Arms. Hopefully the Bowmen will run away when it's the enemy turn. And the Grail Knights are dead after this combat anyway. So the King just whomps them to death. And now on to my turn 6. The Iron Drakes pick the most expensive unit to shoot down, which was the Knights of the Realm, not the BSB. And then the Rangers start shooting away at the Duke on Pegasus, and they kill him as well. The Organ Guns shoot down the Peasants. So there is a BSB left alive. At Bretonnian turn 6, the Peasant Archers do actually rally, so they don't run off the table. So it's not... It would be almost a tabling with just him alive if they hadn't rallied. So 2 units left for the Bretonnians, lots left alive for the Dwarves, so that is a very large win for the Dwarves, and it comes out as a 19-1 when we work out the scores, so very hefty victory there. And I think it's just a bad matchup for Bretonnians to begin with, and especially with a narrow playing area, because there's less flanks for me to defend. We were quite far from the woods as well with the terrain set up, so the Green Knight couldn't get into an optimal position. And once the Green Knight died, it never came back either, so that was unfortunate. So I think in general my list is just good against this kind of list. I think the Bretonnians, they should probably not be charging into Rangers with single units. A long line of Rangers with crossbows and great weapons are just going to be a bad time for any small unit of Knights, so I wouldn't even bother personally. It's easier said than done because they can be positioned right in front of you with the scout move or with the scout deployment. But if you're flying, you can always hop over them, so I would just avoid the Rangers completely, unless you can hit them in the flank, because otherwise it's just too many attacks back. So I'd just never hit the Rangers in the front would be my advice. Or just shoot them. Then we are on to round 3. So open battle, we've got a draw and a huge win so far, so that's propelled me up the table, and we're up against the Empire. Now, this is not the same Empire list that I played against in one of my battle reports that completely obliterated my army as I very slowly walked towards it. And you'll see, against this mega gun line where every single unit shoots, most of them with greater range than my units, I have tried out some new deployment strategies. So, you can see that the Iron Breakers are deployed in marching column, so are the Dwarf Warriors, because there is nothing over there that is even a threat in a fight. Everything shoots. So I'll tell you what's in the list. There is a wizard on foot with the Ruby Ring of Ruin, Lore Familiar, 2 Power Scrolls, and I'll figure out where he is in a minute. There is a captain with a halberd and dragon bow, which is a nice shooting attack. There are 3 engineers to support the vast array of war machines. With Hochland long rifles, they can also shoot. And the understanding is that currently they can actually fire their weapons and also lend their ballistic skill to the machines. That's how my opponent understands it to work. I've seen it played the other way where they can't, but I am not 100% sure on that. So I'm just going to go with the last thing I heard, which is that they can do both. It's only 1 shot anyway, so it's not game breaking either way. Then there are 3 units of 10 state missile troops, and they have a champion with Hochland long rifle, and the rest of them have crossbows, so good range on them. 10 Free Company militia, 2 of those units, and they have throwing weapons. So everything with shooty attacks. There are 3 units of 6 skirmishing archers as well. There are 3 units of 6 outriders with their repeater handguns. So they've got lots of shots, but not the greatest to hit rolls because they're ponderous as well, so if they start moving, it's not great. Let's see. Ed says, yeah, it's the way it's worded, the war machine buff is separate from shooting, it's just a once per turn ability. Yep, so the Empire get the best of both worlds, really. They get a really nice gun on their engineer, which is just way better than the one the dwarves can take at the moment, unless we get a new engineer option in the Arcane Journal. And they can also lend their ballistic skill to the war machines, which I can understand why the dwarf engineers don't, because they're ballistic skill 5, so it would be very strong. So why not just make the dwarf engineer ballistic skill 4 instead, if you thought that was overpowered? Or make it ballistic skill 5, allow him to use his ballistic skill, but make him more expensive. I think that would be fair. I think the way the engineer currently works for the dwarves is underpowered, and you would think dwarves should have a line of guns and a load of engineers there supporting them. But it's not optimal to do it that way, because often you'll get no use out of one of them. So, let's have a look at what else is in there. 2 great cannons. 3 great cannons, actually, and 2 Hellblaster volley guns. The Hellblaster volley guns are over there. Now, there are so many drops in this army. I have had to put down my entire army, apart from the miners and the rangers, before my opponent had deployed almost anything. So, I put my organ guns in the position where they're most likely to be able to hit something which is front and centre on the hill. The most optimal way to deploy my army in this game is probably to just hide everything behind woods or behind a building and just avoid getting shot by cannons for the whole game. That's not great though, because they'll kill something during the game, the cannons, and I'll just take a small loss at least that way. If I play my usual way, it's going to be a massive loss against these guys because I have to be aggressive. If I stay back, I'll just get shot to death by everything. The cannons have superior range, and on average, they only take 1 shot to kill an organ gun, which is very worrying because there's 3 of them, and I've got 3 organ guns, so in turn 1 they could all be dead. Obviously, they have to jump through a few hoops of landing the cannonball on them, but they've got multiple engineers for re-rolling the artillery dice as well. I don't know whether the Empire ones can re-roll a dice or whether it's just re-roll a misfire. So that might be different to the dwarf one, possibly. So we shall see. And yeah, my opponent was then able to put all the war machines down out of range of the organ guns and just put everything out of range of the organ guns. So yeah, it is just re-roll an artillery dice. So it's just as good as the dwarf one in that respect. So yeah, I think the Empire engineers are way too good compared to the dwarven ones, which doesn't make any sense. If it's from a game balance point of view, then you can make an argument for it if that was their thinking. But from a fluff point of view, you write the rules first to match how the armies are supposed to be themed, what they're supposed to work like in a real fantasy battle. And the dwarves are just supposed to have superior engineering, but it doesn't look like that is the case at all when you compare it to the engineers of the Empire. So it's really bizarre. So hopefully the dwarves get some buff to the war machines in the book. Otherwise, it's really weird and silly in my opinion. So I'm not going to endlessly complain about the Empire, because I don't think they're hideously overpowered as a faction. There are things that are pretty tasty against them that they struggle to deal with as well. So It is a strong list though, and I think it's the nightmare matchup for my list specifically because it outranges all my shooting, and it's got way more shooting than I do. And my fighter units are so slow; it'll take multiple turns to get there, even with marching column. So the Ironbreakers are drilled, so being in marching column, it's less of an issue for them because they can bloop, bloop, and then go back into normal formation and then declare a charge. The Shield Warriors are just going to go bloop, bloop, and then pop out of formation and then have to waste a turn before they can charge because they're not drilled. So, what's my plan? The Rangers are over on this side up against measly, crummy shooty units, and I've gone in skirmish formation here because everything shoots. So it's going to be hard to hit me, it's going to be easy for me to hit these troops here. These are just garbage troops there, so I'm hoping I'm going to win the fight there. Take off a couple of things. I think I have to go all in, kill a few things, and risk getting tabled. If I stay back, I'll lose a few things, and that would be it. Probably wouldn't lose everything, but it'd still be a medium loss, probably. If I go all in, I'm going to take down some of the Empire with me, so that hopefully it's only a small loss at the end, if it is still a loss. I expect it to be a loss, because I'm just walking towards guns. And I'm even going to have to move my organ guns in turn 1, so that they can possibly shoot something in turn 2 as well. Ed is bringing something similar with less Outriders and a General and a Griffin to next weekend's event. That sounds quite tasty as well. Outriders, I do like their stats, but it is missing a flyer. Obviously, they're always welcome in lists. So I think this list was built specifically so everything shoots and nothing wants to fight. So it's very much rock, paper, scissors situation if it comes up against certain things that can deal with that. So the Rangers looking at these cruddy units here that I can hopefully kill and get some points for that. And then the Thunderers are off on this side. So they're not going to participate in the game because they're just going to get killed before they do anything, probably. The Miners off the table, I'll see if there's anywhere juicy for them to come in when they roll successfully. And the Organ Guns are going to try and shoot down some of the enemy stuff once they move up and don't get cannoned off, hopefully. Gyrocopter is kind of giving away free points by moving up, but I can use it to block lines of sight and stop the volley guns having an optimal round of shooting, potentially. And there's all the enemy stuff. So we've got one engineer here behind the volley guns, one engineer there spreading his love around between the cannon and the volley gun. Outriders behind, we've got some troops there who still have throwing weapons. We've got some skirmishing archers in the front. We've got another cannon there with another engineer in the middle. We've got the Empire Captain next to these crossbows. We've got more crossbows there, more Outriders, and here we go. Can the organ guns survive a round of cannon fire to do something on their own? Boom. Let's go. Here are the spells that the level 4 has. Glittering Robe. -1 to hit against that unit. Miasmic Mirage, which is -2 modifier to movement and cannot charge or march, which could be important in this game because I may want to declare charges when I get there, and I could see why that would be a great spell to have in this list, because when the enemy gets to you, you just want them to not be able to charge you. And Shimmering Dragon, so friendly character can get fly 10, potentially useful if you need to fly around, I suppose. And then Column of Crystal. So this is a really powerful thing as well, a vortex. So two things here that can deny charges. One that prevents the enemy charging, one that can just block line of sight so they can't charge through it. So it's very well thought out, obviously, this list, because when the enemy finally reach you, you've got two ways to prevent them from attacking you, which is quite strong. I get to go first, so I'm going to be able to move before I get killed horribly. So the Rangers shoot away at this unit of crossbows, take quite a few of them down. I march up my combat units in marching columns, they're going pretty fast. Gyrocopter gets up in front of the enemy, and the Iron Drakes move up as well, ready to shoot. Because what I want to do, Silver Fox says, anyone else think he has done a great paint job? If you're talking about the Empire, which I assume you are, because we've all been looking at my army already endlessly, then they are very nice. They're very cohesive, very gritty looking, very dark. So I think they're just very nice models as well. I think the Age of Sigmar Empire stuff is really good, and a lot of that's been used here. So, Iron Drakes, their plan is to use a Trollhammer Torpedo to kill a volley gun. That's their dream in this game. So they're going to move forward with that goal in mind. The Organ Guns move forward off the hill because they want to be able to shoot something at some point. And turn 1 for the Empire, so let's see if we can survive some shots. Outriders spreading out, so they're going to be in volley gun range if the volley guns live. Oh, so you were talking about my army, were you then? Love the bases and movement trays with the Goblin Green, especially the 4th edition organ gun. Yes, I really love the 2 metal organ guns from the 2 different stages. The spiky one is a classic, and I remember I may just do a video on organ guns at some point because I've got all the old army books, and I used to look through, because by the time I got the book, I think they'd already upgraded to the next one, which I also have. But the old spiky one was represented in the book that I was using, and in the Warhammer Armies Dwarfs book. So I saw that organ gun in there, but it wasn't available to buy at that stage. So it was always kind of this mythical thing, this old spiky organ gun that was never available for sale when I was trying to buy Dwarven stuff. But I really like the one that came after that. So that's probably my favourite one. And then the newer plastic ones, okay. I don't think it's as characterful, the crew certainly aren't, but it's okay. And I get to have 3 different ones. There is actually an even older organ gun as well, which wasn't faction specific. So I don't know if that one truly counts as a dwarf organ gun, because it was in common with I think the Empire could use it as well. Some of the other factions certainly also used the same model with, I don't know if it was different pieces or whether it was just different crew, but it definitely wasn't dwarf specific, so I'm counting the spiky one as the first true dwarf organ gun unless someone knows otherwise. So, yeah, and this dwarf army, I don't think it was painted well until a few months ago when I started adding extra highlights to it, getting it ready for the old world, which I have done a couple of videos on as well on this channel, on the process of bringing them up to speed for the old world and making them a more attractive army to look at. My green flock, by the way, is nearly run out. It's the same pot of green flock that I bought in about 1995, probably, from Games Workshop, and I used it on my old Space Marines, my old Chaos Warriors, and all my old armies back then, and there isn't that much left of it. It goes a long way, though. You need a thin spread of it on top of the Goblin Green, so hopefully it'll do the rest of my Dwarf army forever, and I just won't use it on anything else. So, cannons blasting away at the organ guns. First one. So, like I said, if they hit an organ gun, on average, they do kill it because they do D3 plus 1 wounds, which is an average of 3 wounds each time. But this one only takes 2 wounds, so that one is alive. Organ gun 1 takes a shot, lives. The other cannon does the same thing to a healthy one. So my opponent did say as he was firing, I'm going to be greedy and go for the healthy one, because obviously, to be most efficient, a cannon should be firing at a healthy organ gun. Because on average, you do kill a healthy one as well, whereas one that's got 1 wound on it is easier for other units to kill. So that is the efficient way to do things, but to guarantee kills, a cannon is the one you want to use. So obviously if 2 cannons fired at the same one here, they would have killed it. As it is, they've just put both of them with 1 wound remaining. The rest of the shooting kills a single ranger, which isn't great. The volley guns open fire, kill the gyrocopter, and they kill 3 iron breakers. And yeah, that's it. So I can accept that as a round. We've not lost any organ guns yet, which is a massive boost. Ed likes all the metal artillery for dwarves, never liked the new plastic stuff. I agree with you. I think the new plastic artillery is nowhere near as good. As far as cannons go, there are 3 different cannons that I have as well, because one of them was the 2 plastic ones. I've got the 2 of the different cannons, but there is a 3rd one which I have bits for, but I don't have the entire cannon, so I don't actually use it. The one that came in the box with the organ gun. There's that one, which I don't really like. The Battle of the Skull Pass one, which is kind of lame, so I try and jazz that one up by putting a telescope on the base as well. And then there's the previous metal one, which I really like. There was another one before that as well, which I don't have. So, there is a vortex that's been placed in front of this unit, so I can't organ gun them, because that's the one that's got a hero in it. And it might be, I think that's the wizard there, and there's a hero attached as well. So there's 2 heroes in the unit. So there's a vortex there to stop me shooting that unit, because it's quite expensive. And obviously, if they run away, I don't know if they can run away, that unit, actually. I'm not sure. So, turn 2 for me. Gonna start shooting away. Blast away some crossbowmen who fall back in good order and almost reach the table edge, which would have been a hilarious demise for them, but they're still in there. Dwarf warriors making their way towards the enemy, still in marching column. Ironbreakers doing the same thing. The miners come on here. So it's a slightly unusual position for the miners, and obviously I've illegally moved them on too far because I was previously thinking that you could come on and march. And obviously I found out that's not the case now. So they've come on and they've moved out the way so that my Trollhammer torpedo could try and hit a volley gun. And, oh, by the way, also, this technically isn't marching column now. So I think I might actually correct the ranks at some point here. But what you should do here is take a model out, or take this rank out and put it on the back. Because otherwise this is no longer a marching column, so they shouldn't be moving triple. But obviously they can do it because they're drilled, so they just need to redress the ranks, go a bit narrower, and then they can still do it. But I think I just forgot that here. Because they were in marching column, but they lost the back rank. So the torpedo doesn't hit anything. The organ guns start blasting. They kill an outrider, and that's it. So all I did was kill a few crossbowmen and one outrider. So the organ guns, not the most wildly successful performance from them. Not a lot of hits there. Charges are declared because both these units of Empire troops here are impetuous, which means they have to roll to see if they have to declare a charge, as if you were suffering from frenzy, basically, but it's on a roll instead of automatic. And they both fail, which means they're going to both try to charge the miners, which is going to get the miners into combat, which is nice, and it's also going to block up lines of sight potentially to the volley guns. So the impetuous troops are really letting the side down here. So we'll see how that goes. The outriders lap around my warriors, which is okay. And I'm thinking that as long as I can keep the outriders moving, they're not very good at shooting when they move because they're ponderous. So it's -2 to hit and then another -1 for the multi-shots. So they really want to be standing still. So if you're ever against outriders, just threaten them, because even though they can move out of your threat range because they're pretty fast, and skirmishers, they can easily avoid you, but you're forcing them to move, and that makes them far less effective when they're shooting. That's my top tip for dealing with outriders. So the charges are attempted and they both fail. So all they've accomplished really is given a difficult shot now. If this volley gun wanted to shoot the... You can see I've changed the ranks there to what it should have been in the last turn. So this volley gun now probably can't shoot the iron breakers very well because they're in the way. And they didn't even make their charges. These outriders have taken a really bizarre formation here. And also apparently now it's been FAQ'd that skirmishers do not block line of sight to their own unit. So you can line up like this and still shoot through your own guys. Which it seemed not to be the case the way the rules were originally written. So that's important for skirmishing units. The archers are going into the woods because they want to shoot at things as well. And various shooting actions are taking place. The cannons are going to have another go. So they do finish off one of the organ guns, which is sad. And another cannon fires, but does not do its job particularly well. And then this one goes down as well. But this one actually went down to shooting from other units, I think. Berg says, awesome battle report, just helped my learning in the first game. Do the organ guns in the woods suffer a hit penalty when shooting out of the woods at another target not in the woods? So if you're in the woods, then it's not an issue. If you're shooting into a target that is in woods, then it is an issue. But if you're in the woods, you don't care. So, 2 organ guns down, which is actually way better than I was expecting by this point in the game. 2 turns of cannon fire down, and I've only lost 2 of them, which is actually not bad at all. So definitely down, definitely looking like it's going to be a loss, but I'm in position to actually strike at the enemy now. So I've got the miners, I've got the iron breakers, who are both potentially in position to dish out some pain on these impetuous troops that have now got closer to me because they failed their impetuous rolls. The iron drakes take some damage from the volley guns though, and a single miner is killed from some shooting as well. Could be the archers that did that. And the long rifle snipes out the Trollhammer torpedo. So I fail the lookout sir with it as well, which means that this unit is now totally useless, because in order to shoot, let's go back and see how far away they are. In order to shoot, I'll have to get to around here, which is going to be a couple more turns of moving while being shot. So instead, I'm going to do the sensible thing with the Iron Drakes and just preserve their points and run off and hide behind this tower for the rest of the game, because the torpedo was my only hope at killing a volley gun, really. So, let's see what I get to do now on my turn 3. So the Rangers do some more shooting, they whittle down some Outriders, which is good, and they almost fall back off the table as well. So these troops that are hugging the back of the table to avoid the organ guns are almost paying for it. So those guys could have easily fled the table there. And this one Outrider is fleeing now because he gets minced to death by the volley gun, by the organ gun, which I haven't bothered turning around because it's pretty risky in that position anyway, with it dangling off the edge of the hill, so I didn't want to mess with it. But it is facing that way, and guns down, loads of them. Last one is fleeing. Iron Drake's running away, as described. Then we've got some combat. So the Iron Breakers charge into one of these impetuous Empire troop units, butcher them, do loads of wounds, and the last 3 run away. I choose not to overrun. Now, this was a tough choice, because if we look at this situation here, if I overrun and catch them, I would have to roll really high. I would then be right next to these cannons. I think I would be probably in the flank of this one. The volley guns would have an open shot on me without these troops being in the way. And all the other shooty stuff, if we go back and look at where it all is. So before the turn, all these units, if I end up here, absolutely everything there can shoot and blast my Iron Breakers in one go. If I stay back, some of them won't be able to shoot me. And it was a tough choice though, because I really want to overrun and then start attacking things like the cannon. But I thought I'd be too vulnerable and I would be kind of side on to this cannon and it would shoot down my flank and kill maybe 6 Iron Breakers, which would be an absolute nightmare. So I didn't think I could risk that. So I've left them where they are, so they're safe from some units. The miners have turned round to face the enemy threat now as well. And there's still this unit of impetuous troops, so we'll see who they want to fight. Turn 3. And the Outrider is still fleeing, because it's down to the last model, so it's unlikely to come back. The impetuous troops fail again, or I think they actually wanted to charge the miners regardless, actually. So it didn't matter whether they failed or passed. So they got to the miners, and as this was happening, what was going through my head was, this is actually quite exciting, because the miners are looking directly at the volley guns and they're in combat. So if I win this and chase after those troops and maybe run them down, then I'm right next to the organ guns in my turn, so I can charge them. The volley guns, should I say. If they flee and they flee off the table through the volley guns, I can then overrun and be next to them as well. And even if I don't win, I'm probably going to be blocked off by this unit, and therefore could charge back into them if they don't want to engage me. If they follow me, we're still in combat, so I'm fairly happy with that, because they're not being shot for a turn. And this unit is far worse at killing than the volley guns are. But hopefully I can win this combat and then get closer to the volley guns. The Iron Breakers are going to get shot by a million things though, but I've got my front on to all the cannons, which is the key thing here. Dwarf Warriors heading off over into this corner to try and get these units that are hiding, because I'm not going to catch the Outriders with them, whereas these guys have got nowhere to hide. The cannon, so you can see that they're hiding from me, these Outriders here. Cannon takes out the final organ gun, so it's sad days, all the organ guns are dead, but it took 3 turns instead of 1, which is what I was expecting. The engineer's hiding behind the hill now as well, because he can't provide any assistance to anything now, so he might as well hide and preserve his points. The Iron Breakers take some casualties from shooting from the volley guns, and some more from the various bows on offer and the cannons. 3 Dwarf Warriors get killed by the Outriders. I think I may lose a ranger or 2 to some shooting there. So, look at this dream. So, the miners win the combat against the Empire troops, who then flee, overrun into the volley gun, good night volley gun next turn. So this is the dream. We've got 8 miners now in combat with a volley gun, and after killing that one, you can just run straight into the next one. So this is the ultimate dream now. So, turn 4 for me. What are the Ironbreakers going to do? At this point, this is actually a really tough dilemma, because I'm going to pick up some good points killing those volley guns. I'm going to get some of the stuff in the corner probably with my rangers who are doing really well. This guy's going to die. I've lost all my organ guns though. So, do I go all out and push these Ironbreakers up here for 1 turn, and then in the next turn try and charge that cannon and overrun off the table to avoid being shot for a turn? That is plan A. Plan B is, do I spend my movement turning around to face the other way, maybe face like this way, and then try and survive a round of shooting, and then on my next turn, whoever's left, march down here as fast as I can, get out of line of sight of the cannons. It's a tough choice, because I'd be preserving a load of points, but it's not a guarantee. Because if I turn around, I still have to face a round of shooting from everything, one of which may well be in the flank at that point, if I'm facing this way. And there's all these guys to shoot as well. The Outriders can come over here and shoot. There's all that lot that can still see me. There is various engineers with rifles. The other thing to consider is that if I do go forwards, this cannon can only really use grape shot against me, which is nowhere near as good against the heavily armoured Ironbreakers. So what would you do? Would you take option A, which is start gunning forward for this cannon and take some shots and then try and charge it with whatever's left and try and kill it and overrun off the table to avoid being shot further? Or would you turn round, take loads of shooting as well, but then be able to run away? I still, to this point, I don't know which is the best, shrewdest, most tactical option. I think it's pretty up in the air. There's slightly more risk with going forward in terms of being shot, but you can actually take out more points and then get to safety. Whereas turning round, you may well take just as much damage being shot, could lose all the Ironbreakers for instance, and just have heroes to run away with. So you're still preserving some points, but you take away all the killing potential. So I don't even know which is best now. Looking back at it, even with hindsight, I know how it ends, and I still don't know what the best choice is here. So you'll see what I do. Turn 4 for me. The Dwarf Warriors continue their relentless advance towards the archers. They actually do a charge because, look at this wild situation here. So because they were in marching column and 2 of them were killed, they are then out of marching column. So the Dwarf Warriors, hold on, no. They lost 3 earlier, but they lost some before that actually, which took them out of marching column already. So yeah, they lost 2 in the previous round, I think. Let's see, how many are here? There's 12 there, 15. They started off with 18. Yeah, so I think they lost a couple earlier that knocked them out of marching column, and so they're no longer in marching column, so now they can declare charges. So they attempt to charge on the archers, who flee right up to the table edge again. No, actually, that's wrong. They charge into the crossbows, who flee and go off the table, I think. So that's great. The miners kill a volley gun and then overrun into the next one, which is also fun. And okay, this is an interesting situation that also comes up in the game. So it is a strange sight, Ruggy, to see them this far up the table. You can see that my Ironbreakers, they did reposition themselves. So rather than, I worked out that if I advance up towards this one, I get flank shot by this cannon, which is really bad. So I've set myself up with a charge into this cannon now in the next turn without giving up my flank, and I felt like this was a good position to do it. So I've given myself a charge and I'm not getting flank shot by any cannons. So that's the position I've gone for. We'll see if that's going to work out. So I've gone with plan A to go towards the cannon and then try and kill it rather than running away. Now, this is a really interesting situation. So when I inevitably kill this volley gun in the next turn, which way should my overrun go? Because if it's centre to centre of where the unit was at the start, centre of my unit's here, centre of the enemy unit's there, but it's this sort of direction. which would overrun into this engineer, who would then have a chance to leap out the way with an initiative test. So, what do we reckon? Do we reckon it's in that direction? Centre to centre? Because I'm sure it's not centre of leader point to leader point. It's not even called leader point in this game. That's Kings of War, they call it the leader point, the centre of the unit to show where the leader is and where you draw things from, line of sight and such. So in this game, the centre point of the front rank would be there, but I don't think that would make any sense in this game, and I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, because then every time you're slightly off centre, you'd be fleeing and pursuing, like, totally in that sort of weird direction. So centre mass to centre mass. So the middle of my unit here, middle of enemy unit there, so the overrun would go in this direction here. However, because this game was taking a really long time, by the way, and my opponent was saying that he thinks it's because he's got so many units and you always have loads of options with them and they have loads of little shots to fire and all of them are rubbish and don't do much. So you have to keep doing it every turn and you always have to make choices with them because they're all skirmishing or they can turn around and shoot at other things. So you've got so many choices and then so many dice to roll, it was just taking an age to get through the Empire turns. So to save time, because once the organ gun had been removed from play and we were really running low on time, I decided, you know what, let's just overrun them off the table. I'm not even going to try and hit the engineer because if they go straight this way, they would hit the table first. So rather than looking where the units were at the time and going back and checking the pictures, just overrun, take them off the table. So that's what's going to happen. It's not the worst outcome for me because it means they're not going to get shot for a turn, but it also means I can't pick up points for the engineer, and when they do get them back on, they're probably going to die anyway. So let's see if my bold strategy of going for this cannon pays off. So, turn 4 for the Empire. The archers move away from my warriors. The outriders move in, the archers surround, and the cannons and the crossbows and the Hochland long rifles all start firing into the ironbreakers. And they kill almost every single ironbreaker. There's just a champion left. So, turn 5. My rangers. And I actually fail my charge into the cannon this turn, I think. So, I don't go very far, which is sad. But I've got another chance to go for them next turn. And my warriors go after the archers who are hiding in the corner, and that's it. Not much to do. Turn 5 for the Empire. So, they gun down the runesmith and the final ironbreaker, but the BSB and the king are still alive at the time of this picture, and then the BSB dies as well. So the king is still alive with a possible charge into the cannon. But he does need to roll a 6 to make it. And yeah, because the unit's now not as wide, because some of them died from this end. The archers move away still, so even further away from my dwarves. And so here's the situation. I've got a decent number of kills now. It's not obscene, but it's going to keep the score respectable, and it's not horribly one-sided at all at this time. So, I've killed a couple of volley guns. Oh, you might notice one of the cannons gone as well. I don't think I actually mentioned this when it happened, but one of the cannons blew itself up. And yeah, that was pretty hilarious from the Dwarven perspective. So the Empire engineers maybe not that skilled after all. One of the cannons blew up. So, cannons gone as well. That's 3 war machines that are quite expensive. I've killed a couple of units out in the corner. There's an outrider unit fleeing, which is almost certainly going to reach the table edge. So I'm doing alright for kill points, and a lot of my stuff is still alive as well. Rangers are expensive. The Iron Drakes are hiding, so they're still alive. My Thunderers, 5 of them are still alive. And the King. So if the King kills this cannon, then overruns off the table, he can't be shot in the next turn. And oh, by the way, look, the King is now down to his last wound as well, just to make it even more dramatic. So my turn 6. If the King kills the cannon, overruns off the table, then he would survive the game because there would be no turn 6 of shooting against him. So my turn 6, the Dwarf Warriors kill the archers in the corner. The King murders the cannon and then overruns 2 inches and doesn't reach the edge. Can you get more dwarfy than that? So he does the most difficult part. He makes the charge, slaughters the cannon with his massive hammer, and then trips over and doesn't make it to the edge of the table. So he's got 1 wound left, and he's facing the entire Empire gun line in turn 6 now. So, if he makes it off the table, he can no longer be shot, which means that we'd probably be looking at a score of probably not a full-on draw, but a small loss is what we're looking at that stage, which I think is very respectable with this matchup, which is the Nightmare matchup. So, turn 6 for the Empire. The King is obviously gunned down horribly by every single gun the Empire have to offer, and the miners who also came back on got gunned down as well. Sad times for all. So, what does the score turn into because the King fails to leave? So even with that, it's only a 13-7. So if the King survives, that turns it probably... It would either be a... Let's actually work it out properly here. So, the King is 222 points. So that would make it less than 300 point difference between the two armies, which means it would be 11-9 if the King doesn't die. Which would be great, and I would be happy to accept that result under the circumstances. And also if the miners didn't die as well, or if the miners had killed an engineer, that could possibly turn it into a draw if you add that up as well. Obviously, these are things that didn't happen, and a cannon obviously might not have blown itself up under other circumstances as well, and that would have changed the result. But with everything, with that being the last thing in the game, the Dwarf King drastically changes the result with his inability to roll a 4 on 2 dice. Onto... Well, I suppose let's talk about this Empire list. This is very tough for the Dwarves to deal with, and I don't know where to start, because the Dwarf Cannons cannot compete with this. On average, the Dwarf Cannons take 2 shots of successfully hitting an enemy war machine in order to kill it. The Empire Cannons take 1 shot on average to kill a Dwarf war machine. So you're just up against it from the start, and I don't know what the answer is. Bolt throwers, certainly not, because they do 2 wounds, which isn't enough to one-shot a war machine, and probably aren't going to hit anyway. Miners, no, because if they're spread along the back of the table, you've got nowhere to come on near the war machines anyway. Gyrocopters, probably not, because they'll move up to the enemy and then get shot down before they can charge, but if you've got loads of them, maybe some of them will get into combat. So maybe gyrocopters could be decent for that job, if you take enough of them. Other than that, I don't know, other than having loads of dwarves in marching column, and then hoping that you don't get hit with the spells that stop you charging or put vortexes in front of you so you can't charge. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. It's very tricky to deal with that list as a dwarf player, because they do what you do, but much better than you. So hopefully the Arcane Journal will give us some answers to that. But I think I did a decent job there. I think that was a fun game, actually. And I had to come up with some tactics that I haven't used before. I haven't started in marching column to advance on the enemy yet, so that was a good learning experience as well, seeing how that works. So, into the next round, and it is command and controls. There is a central bit of terrain, and we want to control it to get some bonus points at the end. Otherwise, it's just kill stuff. And I'm up against the Warriors of Chaos. Now, when I see Warriors of Chaos, I immediately think, oh no, there's going to be loads of big flying monsters, and that's going to be a nightmare. However, in this list, there is no flying monster, not even one. So, let's have a quick drink here, since I've been talking for 1 hour 48 minutes. After playing 5 games of Warhammer, in 2 days by the way, and also doing a live stream last night, which is a good 40 odd minutes I'm sure. So, Warriors of Chaos, no flying monsters, controversially. So there's a Sorcerer Lord on foot, who has the Mark of Tzeentch, level 4 wizard, who has Demonology, and is hoping to get the spell that moves a unit a huge amount of distance. So it gives them fly 12, and you can use it on infantry. And that spell, if you were to put it on this big unit of chosen warriors of Khorne, I think they're of Khorne. Let me just double check here. Yeah, Mark of Khorne, 20 of them who are drilled. So, if you put it on them, they can go into marching column and then fly 36 inches. And then next turn come out of marching column and charge something with 1 billion wide Khornate warriors with frenzy, 1 million attacks, and that is the trick of the whole army apparently. So, if I can shut down that happening, that would be great. And I've even used my deployment to try and mitigate the chances of that hitting me. So, we've also got a Chaos Lord on foot who is in with that unit as well, so it's even more dangerous because he's 277 points, so he's more impressive than my King, for instance. He's got the Mark of Khorne as well. There are 10 Chaos Warriors, which are at the back there. They're housing the Sorcerer, who's on the end of the unit there. Then we've got 18 Chaos Marauders, who are hiding at the back somewhere. And which of the Marauders? Actually, it's 11 Marauders here. And 18 Marauders are over there somewhere, I think. No, actually, they're here. So they're in a block, and the skirmishing ones are over there. That's the smaller unit. Then there are 2 units of 5 Marauder Horsemen on the front, screening off the rest of the units. There are the 20 Chosen, which I've already discussed, with Drilled and Mark of Khorne, and the Razor Standard, which gives you extra AP. There's a Chariot here, and there are 5 Chosen Knights, 216 points, Mark of Chaos Undivided. So they are at the back there, hiding behind the Marauder Horsemen. So I've put my 3 Organ Guns on the hill. I want to gun down some cavalry, gun down a chariot. I've put my Iron Breakers next to the hill. I'm going to use this bit of terrain to my advantage because I can't really be attacked diagonally, except for if this unit flies and then tries to land like over here somewhere. So I've got my Iron Drakes on this side to shut down cavalry. I've got my Thunderers in the woods over here. This was an early deployment drop for me, and the whole purpose was to make my opponent think that I was putting some stuff over on this side. So there are some enemy units over there. So we'll see if they get anything done, the Thunderers. If not, they're just sitting in difficult terrain. Anyone who charges them is taking a risk. The Rangers were the last thing I put down. The reasoning behind putting them here in a really suboptimal position for their shooting is because I was measuring where these guys could go with a 36-inch fly move. And the position they can land in, they can't land behind me and then turn sideways. So it would take them a whole extra turn to turn round and then threaten the flank, by which time I can be moving away. So the only thing they can do here, if they want to fly over me, is land there in a block facing forwards, or land here. And I haven't given them enough room between me and the terrain to turn sideways there either. So all they can do is fly and land and look at me, and then get shot, and then charge me, and then get shot on the stand and shoot. And then they may well kill the Rangers, but they're going to take casualties doing it. So I think the Rangers are a worthy sacrifice to stop this really dangerous tactic. They don't really have... Well, they could kind of land here, maybe. But if they'd be in marching column when they landed there. So that's not ideal under any circumstances. Because if you land there in marching column and I charge you, you're not getting many attacks back. And I would probably kick their butt on combat res with Iron Breakers, who are very resilient against their attacks. So Iron Breakers are not the ideal unit to be hitting with these Khorne guys, because I could well wipe out the front rank with the King on his own. The Lord would do some damage, but it's not an ideal situation to be in. You don't want to be stuck there in marching column, ideally, because the first round of combat is going to be pretty rough, I think. So let's see how it goes. Look at my deployment line, the enemy deployment line. There's the Sorcerer. So, miners off the table, they are still to come in. And close-ups of the terrifying Khornate mask there. And what's that? An organ gun is dead. How can that happen with me going first? Well, would you like to know the chances of an organ gun blowing itself up in Warhammer the Old World? So, it is more unlikely than 200 to 1 chance. because you have to roll 2 misfires. Wait, there's only one side of the dice that says misfire, so you have to roll both of them. You then have to roll a 1 on the misfire table. So this is one of those rare situations where the engineer has already used his reroll to stop a misfire from one of the other organ guns, and then the next organ gun rolls 2 misfires and then rolls a 1 and blows up. So more than 200 to 1 chance of that happening, and it's gone. So we're down an organ gun immediately, which is obviously bad, but it's not the end of the world. It's the end of the organ gun's world, though. So managed to kill one of the chosen knights with the other guns, which is good. Whittled them down. They're a very tough, hard-hitting unit that you just want to whittle away at and make them less significant when they reach, because obviously if they're charging something like Iron Drakes and they're not at full strength, then they're going to take damage from the stand and shoot as well, and they won't have a good time. So that's about it for the first turn, because I'm playing defensively with the Rangers. They're not able to accomplish much yet. The Gyrocopter just going out into the middle. It's going to flee if anyone tries to charge it. Ed says, I managed to blow up a Hellblaster with 2 engineers on it once, rolled 10, then 4 misfires in a row, then a 1. Okay, so that is extremely unlikely as well. The odds on that are probably also astronomical. It's mitigated slightly because you are rolling 3 dice there, so you're slightly more likely to roll 2 misfires on 3 dice, obviously, than you are on 2. But then, yes, them 2 turning into misfires afterwards is also very unlikely, so that's also a ridiculous situation. So, we've got some charges declared. The Gyrocopter flees past the organ gun, and the Marauder Horsemen continue their pursuit. So they have now in close range for my remaining organ guns to blast away. And the other Marauders move up as well. The Chosen move up. The Chariot moves up. Everything's moving up. So I'm going to have to pick who I want to shoot, who I'm going to prioritise. And I need to get rid of these guys, these horsemen, because they can charge my organ guns, which I wouldn't like. So you'll notice that these Chosen haven't moved. That's because the spell that was supposed to give them the Fly 12 did not go off. So, my turn 2. The Rangers get some shooting in, kill a Chosen or 2. The Miners pop up. Now, they shouldn't be able to be in this optimal a position here, because this is when I was just reading the part of the rules that doesn't tell you the full rules, because that'd be too easy. So I couldn't find the part that tells you to put their back against the edge of the board. So I was suddenly thinking, actually, the way I'm reading this, it looks like I can just be touching it at all. So put the side on, because I couldn't find anything to contradict it, and then move towards them, thinking I could also march, because I missed that bit as well, because it's not very well laid out, this rulebook. So what you have to do when you're coming in is with your back against the wall. Yes, Ruggy, the rules for ambushes are all over the place. And if anyone can find the page that tells you about reinforcements arriving on the table, then let me know, because I couldn't find it in the index, and I couldn't find it just by browsing through any of the other sections. So let me know. So they shouldn't be in this position, but it's not like I was able to charge anyway, so no big harm done there. So the Gyrocopter moves out to try and drop its flame template on a Marauder Horseman or 2. Wipe out one unit with the organ guns, the other one decides to kill another Chosen and leave this one alive. So I think they're a big threat. And they are in range to charge maybe an organ gun, which would be bad times. The Chariot is a threat as well. I've repositioned my units here so the Iron Breakers can see anyone that charges the organ guns, which is going to maybe deter the Chosen Knights from charging the organ guns. It would certainly put me off if I saw Iron Breakers looking there. Maybe this one is a bit safer because it's going to be a very long charge then. Although maybe not as long as you think, because with Drilled, obviously I could expand the ranks this way a few and make it a less of a charge, because I would have to wheel less to line up and touch you. So maybe it's possible. And so the Chosen declare a charge into the Gyrocopter. So I'm thinking here what they wanted to happen, if my opponent watches this video can confirm. I think they wanted the Gyrocopter to flee so that they could then redirect the charge into the Iron Drakes and not suffer a stand and shoot, because you can't stand and shoot if it's a redirected charge. So on that basis, I chose to stay there with the Gyrocopter. So hopefully that's not what the Chaos Forces wanted. The Marauder Horsemen charge into one of the organ guns. So both of them are successful. The chariot charges into the dwarf warriors, and the spell goes off that gives the chosen chaos warriors a huge fly move, and they don't need to go into marching column to get this far now. They can just fly 24 and land right in front of the rangers, going quite wide as well. So I'm going to have one turn to blast away at them now before they charge in. The chaos warriors turn to look at the miners and then try and cast some spells on them. So 3 of them are killed as a result of the, I think it's a fireball from the wizard who's there. The marauders move up a bit as well. So the organ gun suffers 2 casualties, but falls back in good order. So it's alive, with 1 model remaining, and the engineer next turn is going to charge in and help it. And the gyrocopter obviously dies, and the chosen knights stay facing that way. They don't want to get flank charged by iron breakers, definitely. So, onto my turn. I'm going to start shooting. So, whittled down some of the chosen with my crossbows and the thunderers in the woods. See, so apparently page 134 is for reinforcements for how the unit enters. Yep, can anyone see the word reinforcements mentioned in the index? Because you're supposed to be able to see the word there, the rule, and then go and look it up in the book. It tells you which page it is, but I can't find the one that actually tells you where reinforcements are. Did you have to find that page manually, or were you able to spot it in the index? So, we've got an organ gun with 20 shots, that's worthy of a photo, and that manages to kill a couple more chosen as well. Obviously, these chaos units often have some kind of ward save, which is annoying. The miners decide not to charge, and in fact, move backwards a bit. So my plan here, if I charge in, I don't get an initiative bonus big enough to make me go first, because I wasn't far enough away. So I would go second, probably get the front rank wiped out, and then die. If I get back up, I'm still a threat, so the enemy wizard has to stay over here for longer, and if they charge in and kill me, they're then stuck behind these woods for a turn. So the miners are just doing delay tactics here. You don't want to get killed on your own turn. So, combat result. The warriors fall back against the chariot after losing a few casualties there. Oh no, that's wrong actually. I lied totally. So, on the previous round, the chariot charged into the warriors and they fell back in good order. In this round, the warriors actually beat the chariot with static combat resolution, and then it ran away. They tried to overrun, but they hit the iron breakers, and the chariot goes all the way over there. So that's good. Ed says it's in the oddball section of the movement section. That is so weird that it would be in the oddball section. That's a standard rule, reinforcements entering the table. Lots of armies have access to ambushes, or when units have left the table and then come in. It's not really an oddball situation. And what's this? The engineer that charged into the marauder horsemen kills some of them. The organ gun crew kills one as well, and they win the combat and drive them back, and the engineer follows after them, saving his precious war machine. Yes, that's exactly what happened. So the organ gun is still alive, teetering on the edge of the hill. Turn 3 for chaos. So they are going to charge into the miners now, those warriors. And the chosen are going to charge into the rangers. So I'm not sure if they take any stunned and shoot casualties. I think they just made their saves against the throwing axes. So in they go. They use drill to go extra wide first. And probably not going to end well for the rangers, but they may get to swing back a little bit if they're lucky. So you can see that the chosen knights only lost 1 to the iron drakes in the previous turn as well. The chariot rallies, turns round to face. These guys, these marauders at the back, are just hiding because what they want to do is just come and contest this building at the end of the game and not get shot before then, because that's all they're good for, really. And all you have to do is have 5 unit strength within 6 inches of the middle piece of terrain, and that contests it. So if both people have at least 5, no one's scoring it. The chosen knights turn round and they're now looking at the organ gun and the iron drakes, so I'm going to have to deal with them. The chaos warriors kill the miners and then overrun off the table. so they'll be able to come back next turn, but importantly that means they can't do certain spells with the wizard because they're going to be off the table until the remaining moves subphase. The engineer takes a wound and gives ground against the 2 Marauder Horsemen, I think that. The Chaos Chosen Champion goes up against Joseph Bugman, the Ranger Champion, and as a result of all that, there is a lot of death inflicted by the Chosen. The Rangers are down to 2 models and flee almost to the edge, but they're not quite caught by the Chosen. So they're stuck a little bit now, but they have killed a significant unit. And I'm fairly pleased with how it's looking here. It's annoying that I haven't been able to kill these Chosen Knights faster. I'm only able to kill 1 a turn. They keep succeeding in their... I think it's a ward save they have, and they keep passing it. I keep seeing the 6 Chaos symbol come up on these black dice. Too much for my liking. Turn 4 for me. So, the Rangers run off the table and die. The organ guns can start blasting. The Engineer kills another Marauder Horseman and follows up after this one. So the Engineer fighting off these chaotic heathens. The Chosen are finally taken out by my shooting, and the other organ gun spins round and blasts off a couple of Chosen over there, so whittling them down as well. And my Iron Breakers are now poised to receive a charge from these Marauders, who I believe are frenzied, so I think they just have to charge. So yes, here they go. They have to charge there. The Chariot charges into the Warriors, and in they go. They're going to get whooped by my Iron Breakers though. The Wizard comes back on with the unit, but rolls a double 1 for a spell, so can't cast it. So I think that was to give them the fly 12 to this unit to then get them into the game, but look at that. Hilarious. And that means the Wizard can't cast any more spells this turn either as a result of that miscast. So the Chariot does not make its charge. The Chosen turn round and trying to get a bit closer to the action, ignoring the Thunderers. One of them's died from a dangerous terrain test, by the way, that's why they're down to 4. Turn 4, yeah, so I already took a picture of that, didn't I? So in the combat itself, the Iron Breakers do loads of casualties. They don't take any back, I think. And yeah, looking good. The Marauders just give ground, I think, though, or maybe fall back in good order, and then the Iron Breakers go after them. So, turn 5 for me. Yes, definitely turn 5. So I shoot, and I think I kill another 1 or 2 of this unit, maybe, with the organ guns. And another one fires at the Chariot, actually trying to take that down, but only put 2 wounds on it, which is sad. Kill the Marauders down to 1 man, who then falls back, and I can't catch up with him, which is really sad. So I could be flank charged by a Chariot now. I don't think the Chariot would do that. I think that would be a bad idea. A flank charge you would normally think is good, but in this situation you've only got 2 wounds left and you're against a really tough, heavily armoured unit with a king in there who ignores armour saves. So I think that would be a bad idea probably to charge in there, into that unit. So the Chariot agrees with me and goes after the Warriors instead. The Wizard is able to cast the spell to give a really fast fly move to the Chaos Warriors now, so they're just hanging around the objective and they're in a position to influence the game with their spells now as well. The drilled Khorne Chosen go into marching column and then move up in this direction towards the centre, so they can maybe fight again now. And the final Marauder from that unit runs away. He's not actually fleeing technically, so he can go wherever he wants. So I've got 1 turn to shoot him before he hides behind the woods now to get the points for that unit. The Chariot kills some Dwarf Warriors and nudges them back at 2 inches, I think. Which is looking dangerous here, because if my Dwarf Warriors get killed by the Chosen, that's a decent chunk of points there, which could swing the game. I've made sure to keep my Iron Breakers within 6 inches of this centre point as well, though, so they would also contest it right now. Turn 6 for me. So the Iron Drakes shoot down the final Marauder that was running away. The Dwarf Warriors beat the Chariot in combat and chase after it. So they're too far away from the Chosen now. And even if they weren't, even if they had, for example, charged overrun less and ended up here, when charged, I was still planning to flee from this unit anyway if they charge me, because I've got the iron breakers in position to hold this bit of terrain anyway. So these guys just need to stay alive and preserve their points. So I think with a flee, they would have got away regardless, even if they hadn't chased this chariot down so far. That's why I would rather chase rather than turn around and take the charge, because fleeing and getting away from them is just a much safer bet. So, turn 6 for the forces of chaos, and the wizard attempts to do some spell casting, kills a few warriors I think with a bit of a fireball or some kind of spell, and that's going to be that. So that's the end of the game. So let's have a look at how that turned out for the final result. And it turned into a draw, 10-10. We only had like 70 points between us, so it's a draw. Another draw. This warrior unit's fairly close to death. The chariot is fairly close to death. This organ gun is down to its last dude as well. So a few units were close that could have swayed it if they died. There were some wild, lucky and unlucky moments as well. There was. So in terms of really good luck, when the wizard in the first turn tried to cast the spell to give this unit a fly 12 move in turn 1, I think I stopped it with a fated dispel on a double 6, which is obviously hilarious. But then one of the organ guns blew itself up, which is even worse odds than doing that. So that's obviously a lame moment for the organ guns. And then after that, we just steadily killed each other and didn't really kill any of the expensive units, so that's why it's a draw. So I took some photos of all the armies. Quick drink time first. So here's a question for the audience. Bit of feedback now. So, would you like me to set it up so you can see my face in the corner of the screen during these videos? So, it'll only be a small face, so you're not going to miss any of the battle, but you'd be able to see my hilarious face expressions then. And look at my majestic hair, obviously. Is that something you want to see? And if so, do you prefer to see that in a square where you can see what's behind me, like the shelves, or do you prefer to see it where it's like green screened out so you can just see me and nothing else, and it overshadows less of the image of the battle? Let me know, because I'm going to set that up again. I did used to do that, but the position of my monitor now made it a bit more annoying to set up, so I just stopped and didn't really start again. So I'm thinking of doing that again. I'm going to crank up the content, not only in frequency on this channel, variety, and try and do some more appealing videos as well. Not just battle reports, but also like top 5 mistakes I made in the old world rules, and list out the various things that I've been playing wrong so that people can learn from that without having to watch 1,000 hours of battle reports to see them all sprinkled throughout. I think that'd be quite handy. Madfidel says we want to see glorious hair, so there's one vote. Let's see. I'm going to add a poll right now. Let's add a poll live. Do you want to see my face during battle reports? Yes, no are the options. There we go. There is a poll started now in the live chat, so you may vote on that. Okay, so we've got the Warriors of Chaos here. We have, those are the ones I just faced. No is winning. That's shocking. There's only one vote. Oh, yes has just taken the lead, and it's equal again. Okay, this is wild. This is very exciting. So if it takes up, like, just this little bottom corner of the screen there, so you can see my expression when something terrible goes wrong, for example. So, we've got some more chaos with some chimeras and a demon prince, and I was told that actually this wouldn't be a bad matchup for me because it's lots of small units I can kill easily, and the chimeras are only toughness 5, which makes them more... It's just easier to deal with them with my strength 5 shooting than big chaos dragons. Then we've got some Tomb Kings, very sandy, with a bone dragon, Necro Sphinx, very nice. Then we've got some more Chaos Warriors, and a very nice converted Chaos Dragon, and a big hideous giant. And this one, I think, won the Coolest Army Award. Then we've got the Dwarves that I faced in round 1, which are a mixture of Citadel and Highland miniatures. Then we've got some Bretonnians with a very nice knight at the front there. And I assume this is Lady Duchard. And when I was asking my opponent whether his sorceress or prophetess was Lady Duchard, and he said no, it was just a regular one, then I believe I described his model as Lady Ducharlatan as a result of that. So just masquerading as Lady Duchard, perhaps. Pretty cool there. Some nice paintwork we're seeing. Now this is a very cool army. This is a classic metal orc and goblin army. Look at that. Classic grenadier giant with goblins living on top. Very cool. The new / old ogres that they brought back, very cool as well. So far, no is winning in the poll, by the way, so if you want to see my face and you haven't voted, then you're currently losing. We have got some delightful wood elves. Very green on the bases there. Nice floral arrangements as well. Got some more Tomb Kings with a giant beetle representing a bone dragon. And a couple of caskets of souls there. Got some more dwarves. And this is a triple Iron Drake list, so I believe this is one of the regular viewers of the channel who I spoke to about this list, and the triple Iron Drakes and the Bolt Thrower. Some fighter units as well. So obviously it's getting to the point now where lots of people have seen the videos. So a lot of the people I'm playing have seen the videos as well, so they know what tactics I'm using and probably how to beat me based on what I've been telling you. Tobias doesn't care about seeing my face, which I don't know how to feel about that. You shouldn't be neutral on seeing my glorious hair. You should be wholly in favour. So, got some cool dwarves there, of course. We've got more Bretonnians. This is the Bretonnian army that I faced, I believe. Yeah, with the Green Knight there, with one of the Pegasus Knights missing by the looks of it. Yes, the small Iron Drake units, very, very good for the Trollhammer Torpedo. Someone in one of the comments on my videos was actually saying that they find Iron Drakes to be terrible and a waste of points, and they always seem to die in everyone's battle reports. But I think they just do a really reliable job of killing stuff with their Strength 5. It's just really good. Just really reliable. Because you're never really wasting Strength 5. That's the lowest strength that you never waste, because you don't really see a lot of Toughness 2 units, do you? Most of the stuff you face is going to be Toughness 3 or 4 in this game. So you're never wasting any of that strength that you've got. So I just find them really reliable on that basis. They've got good ballistic skill, move and shoot, really good stand and shoot. The Trollhammer Torpedo is obviously really good when it hits. Mine hasn't done much in this event so far. So we've got more Tomb Kings with 2 Bone Dragons, 2 Caskets, Tomb Scorpions, I think, are these 2. So this army was doing really well at the event at this point, and it's nice paint jobs as well, very clean. It's mostly, I think, like spot highlighting on a lot of it. So some of it's more complicated, like I don't know whether there's some glazes perhaps going on with some of these, or whether this is just edge highlighting. But like the Bone Dragon looks really effective, but also looks like it would be pretty quick to paint as well. It looks like it's mostly black with spots on it, so it looks really good. But I think that's probably a time efficient way of painting as well. These ones look more time consuming. Then we've got the Empire with all the millions of guns, which we've already seen, of course. And into the final battle. So we've got a picture of some spells first. What's going on here? So let's just show you who it is first. It's the High Elves. So let me pull up the list that I'm up against for the High Elves in round 5. I'm currently on 2 draws, a win, and a loss. So I will tell you that this High Elf list is the one I was looking at earlier in the day and thinking this one is a very nightmarish matchup for me. And I will tell you why. So, there is a prince on a Star Dragon with Talisman of Protection, Dragon Helm, Pure of Heart, General, full plate with a shield. So he's got really good save, ward save, and regeneration. Then we've got an Archmage, also on a dragon, Star Dragon. So also really good at fighting, but also a level 4 wizard. And this one just lacks a ward save, but also has regeneration, but can give himself a ward save with one of the spells. So in general, they're both going to be really good armor save, 5+ ward, 5+ regeneration. They have like 8 or 9 wounds each, and they're just really difficult to bring down. But you combine that with 2 Frost Phoenixes as well, and yeah, they're 205 points. They're also a big scary flyer, but they're a bit easier to kill, but they're all toughness 6, these things. So even the Organ Guns and the Iron Drakes are going to be wounding on 5s. The Trollhammer Torpedo is really the one thing that's a big threat to them. So on that basis, I think this is a nightmare matchup. There's also an Eagle, just as if there weren't enough flyers in there already, which can be annoying for war machines, of course. Then there are 6 Silver Helms, 2 units of those in the core section, and 2 units of 5 Illyrian Reavers. So, yeah, so those are just core units, which I find cool, that you can just take the cavalry units as core. You don't have to take any infantry in the High Elves, that's interesting. And yeah, so that's the lot. So not a lot of units, but they're all fast. So the Knights I can kill. And you'll notice my deployment is very different to usual here. So, there are large targets, so I can put my shooting behind my other units, which is factor 1 to consider. The other factor is, if I use my normal strategy, spread out across the table, and shoot things, I will almost certainly kill several units of cavalry, maybe a Frost Phoenix. But I think I would then be tabled. That's my expert opinion on what would happen if I spread out across the table. I think that all this fast stuff is too hard hitting, and I think it would just start wiping and moving through each section of my army, one by one. So, what I've gone for is a hybrid corner castle manoeuvre. Because I've always said I'm never going to fully corner castle, because that's just not going to happen. It's not going to lead to a game of any interest for anybody. And opponents will often just say, well, that looks too terrible to go and face. I don't want to go and walk into the range of 3 Organ Guns and Iron Drakes and all that terrifying stuff. I'm just going to go and hide in the corner for the whole game. We've got nothing with long range. Let's just take a draw. Maybe even then decide late in the game, actually, you know what? If I'm going second as the opponent, I'm going to maybe charge one of your units in the last turn and try and kill it and try and just sneak a win. So, yes. What? We've got a donation to the Gyrocopter Fund. Thank you, Gilthos. And I do need to remember, actually, straight after this video, I'm going to look on the GW website to see if they've got any gyrocopters in stock right now. Because I do live quite close to various Games Workshop stores. Being in Nottingham, I'm close to Warhammer World and the GW store in Nottingham City Centre. And there's also an Element Games there as well. So if any of those have got gyrocopters in stock, I may just buy some immediately if they're back in stock now. So thank you very much for that donation. Let's give that a heart reaction to give it the proper appreciation it deserves. The poll is still going, by the way. We've had 12 votes only out of 36 viewers, so this is like an election, this. You haven't got a representative view of the population because not enough people are voting. So we need to get the vote, need to get people serious about voting now. Come on, do you want to see my face during battle reports in the little box in the corner, or just a little face with green screen around it so you can see my hilarious facial reactions to what's going on? Looks of dismay as I roll a double misfire with an organ gun, looks of joy, perhaps, as I run down a dragon. I can see people are voting now, the numbers wildly swaying up and down as they do. So, we've got this corner castle going on, but we have got some bait outside the castle. If I put 5 Thunderers outside the castle, no one is going to care about that. Who in their right mind is going to think, oh yes, I'm going to go and charge 5 Thunderers and collect 50 points or 60 points and then get organ gunned to death? No one in their right mind is going to do that. If I give them a nearly 300-point unit of rangers out in the open, then maybe that's going to entice them in. Optimally, if I were to stick the rangers at the back here, the enemy will have to come in. They will have to either charge into units that can stand and shoot, like the Iron Drakes, and then go into a fighty unit. And then not everything's going to be fighting when they steam in, depending how much stuff actually comes in. Or they'd go into the Iron Breakers, which is a bad idea probably for one individual big monster, because you can get maybe challenged out with an Iron Breaker champion and maybe lose on static combat res potentially there. So you'll have issues, and the organ gun's going to be blasting if you just do a full-on assault into the corner. So what I want you to do is to assault these rangers, and then I've got something to shoot at them. So you've got to offer some bait. You can't just throw the line out into the river without a bit of bait on the end of the fishing line. Otherwise, who's going to bite? And you can't just offer them a tiny, insignificant piece of bait, because it's not going to entice them. You've got to offer them something juicy. So we're going for a hybrid corner camp. It's experimental because I've not really done anything like this corner camping wise before. So this is the most campy you'll ever see me in the corner. And the reason I think it'll work is because if you don't attack the rangers, they're actually very capable of shooting down one of these units early on in the game. And if you decide, okay, well, I'm just not going to engage, everyone's going to turn around and hide in the corner, then at that point you're taking a draw when there is something juicy here that you could kill and win the game. So I feel like these rangers are enticing enough. So we'll see whether that pays off. Obviously it's my job to make games entertaining as a battle reporter. My opponents have no obligation to do that whatsoever. They're fully within their rights to hide in the corner if they think I'm being too defensive with a gunline hiding. So it's my fault if they choose to do that for being too defensive. I have to make these battles fun for people to watch. So you'll notice the Ironbreakers are staring intently in this direction as well, so that if anyone does charge in there, they're going to be in position to steam in there with my king, who can do some good damage. Ruggy says it's more like a refused flank. Yes, this one probably is. This isn't a full-on corner camp because there is an expensive unit outside of the camp, which is significant. Because normally in the corner camp, you're denying any points unless the enemy come right up to you. I'm actually giving them a zone they can come into and kill something, and then I can start shooting them. So it's a hybrid strategy. We'll see if it pays off here. Got the Frost Phoenixes over there. And my opponent gets to go first, so we'll get a good idea of what the strategy is going to be now. I don't think the Knights are going to come near me, because that would be silly, because they'll get organ gunned. But all the flyers can get involved. So we've got Phoenix that's outside the arc of visibility of the Rangers, so if I want to be in the front to maybe stand and shoot against the Phoenix out of turn, take some dangerous terrain tests, and then also not stand and shoot into something else as well. Everyone else is just lining up behind there. So lots of people don't want to see my face, so I'm thinking it's because they see battle reporters who do that, and it covers a significant bit of the screen, so you actually miss what's going on the screen. So I think that's influencing the vote, definitely, how other people do it, where it fills a significant portion. The two big scary dragons get into the middle as well, and they get the ward save spell off as well, this dragon, so that means that both of them have got triple saves. Whoever I shoot at is going to have a triple save. And those dice, I think, are marking out the range of certain organ guns. So, a spell is then cast to allow this Phoenix to have another move, which then pops it down here. And turn one for me. Let's see what I can do. So, I'm going to start shooting the Wizard Dragon because it's got an inferior armor save. So, the Rangers are going to shoot it. Two organ guns are in range. This one is not, so this one has to shoot the big scary one. I'm not in range over here because these guys have actually moved out of range of the Iron Drakes, so I'm going to have to start chasing them if I want to kill them. So turn one for me, the Rangers start shooting. We do 2 wounds to the Wizard Dragon, and that's with the organ guns helping as well. So just 2 wounds, so not a lot. But the Iron Breakers do move up in anticipation of a big multi-charge coming in here, and then maybe a furious counter-charge against one of the dragons. Because if I just go all in and attack everything, I die. If I camp in the corner, there's no incentive for my opponent to attack me, so we just accept a draw, or I accept a small loss when the dragons attack me at the end of the game and kill a unit. So I'd rather go for it and try and entice them in and then gun them down. So into my opponent's turn, and Frost Phoenix into the flank and the main dragon into the front. The reason the wizard dragon is not going in is because it tried to cast the ward save spell, and my runesmith is now within 18 inches, so I was able to auto-dispel that. So otherwise it would have been 2 dragons in the front. So the rangers have actually got half a chance of surviving now, because they're only against 2. It is cool. And I just got the message that my streaming software stopped broadcasting for a moment. So let me know if you can still see what's going on here. It seems to be back now, so I think that's fine. You may have had a small interruption of the stream there. So we've got 2 units that get in. And this guy is just repositioning so he's in range of less organ guns. And I'm marking how many auto-dispels I have on the back with that dice there for the runesmith. So the Reavers are actually backing away further from the Iron Drakes. And it's mostly going to be about the flyers, everyone else is hiding. So, let's see how this goes. I issue a challenge with the champion. Or actually, the dragon issues a challenge and I accept it. Now, we were both kind of on the fence about whether it's good for either of us for a challenge to take place here. So, if the dragon is in a challenge, obviously whoever's left to fight, I can't punch it in the face because it's in a challenge. However, also, if there's a challenge going on, far less of the rangers are going to die, so I'm not going to drop below half of the unit strength of these 2 units, which means that I can fall back in good order even if I lose the combat by a lot via the overkill. So there's pros and cons for the challenge for both me and my opponent here. So we do end up with a challenge. My thought was this unit wants to stay alive as long as possible rather than trying to hit this guy who's got 3 different saves that are really good. So even with the -2 AP, I think he's still going to be on 3 5-ups in a row. And I'd be lucky to get... He's toughness 6, I'm only strength 5. So I'd be lucky to get like 3 wounds through on him, and on average he's going to save all those. So I would rather keep the unit alive longer. That was my thinking. So they do end up falling back in good order, and they don't lose too many. They do lose the champion, and they both decide to follow up the Phoenix and the Dragon, because they don't want to be shot. And my turn 2. So I'm advancing with my shooting units on the enemies that are hiding. The gyrocopter's heading over that way as well because I want to cut off their retreat so they can't also go this way, and then maybe I can pop out and flame them or drop bombs on them as well. Then down here, the organ guns, some of them start moving because they can't shoot anything at the moment, and the ones that can shoot just hit nothing because I was trying to shoot the wizard dragon. Some of them are in range. The rangers flee from combat from the dragon, and they don't quite run off the edge of the table, thankfully, and then the dragon overruns, and because I had moved my iron breakers, let me go back and show you where they were. So I had to put my iron breakers, use their drilled to go an extra file wide, so that when they went forward, the dragon then overrunning through the rangers would clip the iron breakers and go into combat with them. So I'm okay with that happening. So that's the situation we're in. They're in combat with the dragon now, which is okay. That's one of the ways that I can maybe do wounds to the dragon. Otherwise, I'm just holding it up with a really tough defensive unit, which I can also live with. So turn 3 for the High Elves. So the Oaken Shield spell is successfully cast because the Runesmith is now in combat, and I can't do anything about it particularly. And the Wizard is now charging into my Iron Breakers as well, so we've got 2 big dragons fighting them. These Reavers and the Eagle are still hiding from being shot. And we do have a challenge that happens down here. Well, Hammerhand is cast as well, which is an assailment spell that you can cast into combat. The Phoenixes are just hanging out. They don't want to get shot by organ guns, obviously. And as a result of challenges, when we get to... Let's see who's in the challenge. So, these are... I think these are armor saves for the challenge that was taking place. And It's not particularly crazy that I could take 4 wounds in the challenge for my Ironbreaker champion, but I think it is hilarious that I rolled 4 1s and nothing else, so I took a picture of it. And with Gromril armor, it's not actually the worst to roll 1s, because you can re-roll 1s with Gromril armor. So he did die and take some overkill as well. But overall, I'm in pretty good shape, and just give ground, I think. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's just to give ground. So they choose to go after me. And got plenty of guys left in there, so we're going to hold them up for a bit longer. Both the dragons are actually in combat, they just won't fit because their wings are so ridiculously massive. Turn 3 for me. So the gyrocopter gets in position to drop a flame template on these two, and there's a wound to the eagle. And my iron drakes move up and try and fire a torpedo, which is the only one that's in range at the reavers, but it misses. So just so you know, during this entire event, the Trollhammer torpedo has not hit anything once, to my recollection, which is very impressive. The Thunderers move up as well. The organ guns are repositioning if they can't shoot, and the one that can fires through the gap between the 2 dragons and puts a couple of wounds onto the phoenix that was running away. And in combat here, we've lost a few more iron breakers, or actually we've lost the runesmith and the king at the same time. So the king, in the last round, the king suffered some wounds, and then more attacks were put onto him in this round as well, and now he finally dies, and the runesmith also died. I think the runesmith was part of a challenge, so that's how he got killed. So because he's already stuck in combat, he'd used his auto dispels, so he's not much use after that point apart from for armor bane, and I'd rather keep the unit alive longer. Turn 4 for the high elves. Oh, by the way, when I was giving ground there, or falling back in good order, I realised actually I can go into more ranks here to try and keep them alive longer, keep the rank bonus, because I'm not doing any wounds to them when I hit back because they've got so many saves, so I'm just going to keep that rank bonus intact for longer. So the phoenix flies away with its wounds, the eagle turns round to look at the gyrocopter, and the phoenixes are hiding, everything else is hiding, it's all about the dragons. So really, you're seeing 2 dragons take on my entire army, which is 1,000 points of stuff, and you'd expect that to be powerful. So the BSB net is now in a challenge with the prince, and he gets killed with not much overkill, and I actually get a point of combat resolution as well, because I got a wound all the way through to the regeneration stage, which means you do get it for combat res. I do think the way regeneration works in Warhammer the Old World is stupid, for the record. I would much rather you get to keep track of how many wounds were caused in that turn, and then at the start of your next turn maybe you roll to get the wounds back. That would make more sense for regeneration. So you could just outright kill a unit and then stop it regenerating at all, but if you leave it on 1 wound, then it can regenerate the wounds back that it suffered in the previous turn. I think that would be much more balanced. The only thing is, it's more stuff to keep track of, because you're keeping track of how many wounds you've taken and how many of them were in the previous turn. So I can understand why they didn't do that to keep it clean, but I think it is just weird and dumb, and not in any way logical the way it works now, in terms of how you would expect regeneration to work. When you stab a hole into a monster that's regenerating, you don't expect it to instantly close up. If you cut its head off, you wouldn't expect it to then grow back seconds later. You'd expect to have a moment to potentially kill it by chopping all the other arms off at the same time, and then it's dead, rather than just everything growing back instantly the second it happens, like healing around your sword almost before you can even pull it out. I think it's too instantaneous, the regeneration in this game, is what I'm trying to say. Lee says, I watch a lot of your battle report channels for Old World, but yours is a favourite, thank you. Well, what would you say are the main differences between my channel and the others? I don't watch a lot of battle reports personally, because I'm more of a YouTube video listener, because I'm painting all the time while I'm watching YouTube, so I'm usually just listening to something and keeping an eye on it. And battle reports, a lot of them out there are more action-packed ones, where it's more visual. You're looking at the units, you're looking at the dice rolls, they're showing you live video action sometimes. So they're not ideal for painting to. Whereas my kind, where you can just look up once, see the photo, and then you've got an idea what's going on, and then you can just hear the description of what's happening while you're painting. I think these are better for painting too. So I think that's why I would prefer videos like this for battle reports. And long videos as well, so if you're painting, you don't have to constantly be finding new videos to watch. Ruggy says, you aren't just giving the broad strokes of what happened, we get the details and more complex look of how the game actually went. Yes, that's one thing I try to do. If anyone who watches battle reports on any game systems on this channel, so Kings of War, Dead Zone, Age of Sigmar, I try to go into as much detail as possible talking about all the moves, because I do have a good memory, so I can remember why moves were made generally, and what led up to the moves, and what I was thinking with certain positioning. And I think that's much more informative on video than just showing you what happened, which is what a lot of channels tend to do. Lee says, the picture storytelling cuts out all the live dice rolling and more... Does that say more model pulling? Okay, there was a little heart that's covering up the word of the comment there, so I had to drag the box to move that out of the way. And model pulling. The battle reports are a story told. I can understand that. So I do understand the appeal of the more action-packed battle reports as well. They're not just totally worthless. There is some excitement, and people watch a lot of those for the banter and the comedy as well. If you've got particularly a channel that's 2 or 3 or 4 people who are all quite funny playing against each other, then it's just a totally different experience watching that more for the entertainment rather than the information. And hopefully people find entertainment and information on this channel. That is the goal. So you can see here that my iron breakers get obliterated by the dragons, which is very sad. And as a result of that, we are now going into my turn and 1 chance to shoot at dragons before they kill everything. So how do we feel that's going to go? But they've got all their ward saves up and everything, so I'm not too confident. Michael says, I feel this format is on point and your voice is okay to listen to. I think the word you're looking for is amazing or mesmerizing or enchanting, perhaps. So, organ guns. We slap 4 wounds onto the wizard, which is, I think he'd already taken 2. So it's not actually that good. So 3 organ guns at full power, full blast, do 2 wounds to the dragon. That tells you all you need to know about their saves, really. They're just very good. The gyrocopter drops another flame template on these guys, and I'm really happy just to sit here and stop them escaping that way. Okay, my shooter units keep advancing on the Reavers, miss with the Trollhammer torpedo again, which is why the Thunderers are advancing faster, because they're not able to shoot because they can't see them yet. I've got my miners in position, ready to be charged. I've got my warriors ready. The organ guns are ready to get charged, no doubt, as well. The Phoenix with the wounds is running away now in my opponent's turn 5. So, the Eagle charging the Gyrocopter, the 2 useless flyers charging and fighting each other. Together at last, Eagle and Gyrocopter, wing and propeller blade. One of my organ guns flees from a dragon, and the other one gets charged because it's too close, so the flea would have just either gone off the table or not gone far enough and been cut down. The other one flees, and then the dragon redirects into the miners. So I'm fairly happy with that outcome, because it means I've got 1 organ gun that's going to shoot next turn, and this one overrunning will only overrun possibly into an engineer, and this one, if it overruns, would go into dwarf warriors, which are quite survivable. They could probably do a good job holding out for a little while against the dragon. They've got a lot of bodies in there. So obviously when you rally an organ gun, it can't shoot that turn, but it is alive, which is important. So what's this? The Gyrocopter defeats the Eagle in combat. You are seeing that correctly. The Eagle is killed and the Gyrocopter overruns into the flank of the Reavers. So the Gyrocopter, amazing. Maybe I should have just charged that thing in earlier, but yeah, I've killed the Eagle despite being charged. So great job by the old copter. And let's see how these combats go. Minor champion in the challenge goes down, with lots of overkill as well. So no shame about killing this classic dwarf lord of legend with a pickaxe. And the miners themselves are okay though, because they are not double outnumbered, so they can just fall back, and the dragon follows up into them a bit, so it's not going to get shot. The other dragon kills the organ gun and overruns and goes off the table in the end, rather than touching the engineer. So we worked out exactly which way it would go after the combat, and determined that centre to centre it would actually just miss the engineer anyway, so he didn't even need to do his initiative test to leap out of the way. So that's off the table, so I can't shoot it. But it also means that it won't be able to cast a ward save on itself next turn, which is significant, because it's going to be entering the table and then not having a ward save. So on my turn 5, the organ guns are spreading out, so there's no overrun potential. The miners are still in this fight. The rangers are still chilling out here, still alive. And what is this? The gyrocopter in the flank kills the Illyrian reavers. You are hearing that right. The gyrocopter wins the combat and they flee off the table. So the gyrocopter has inflicted all the kills that my army has done so far. So it is doing sterling work. The Iron Drakes turn round and they are going to look back this way in case they get to shoot a dragon at some point before the end of the game. The miners flee from the dragon, but the dragon chooses not to overrun into the warriors, but instead turn round and look at the 4 remaining rangers. Now, we're going to have a dilemma here in a moment, which is going to be an interesting situation to discuss. So, the rangers are dead. I've taken the banner rune on them that makes them immune to fear and terror. So they didn't just auto-flee off the table. I voluntarily fled while being a millimetre away from the table edge. The reason is they're being charged by a dragon. If they get charged and killed in combat, well, if they get charged, they're going to die, regardless. There's 4 of them and they've got barely any armour, so they are going to die 100%. If they get killed in combat, they give away bonus points for the banner. If they flee off the table and haven't been run down, they just leave the table, then you don't get points for the banner, as far as I'm aware. So, they're preserving 50 points there by fleeing. So they take their banner, run back to the Dwarven Hold, plant the banner at the base and say, hey, look lads, we're back. We brought a banner. What do you think of that? Okay, cool. How did the battle go? So they don't really have a good answer for that question, but they brought one of the banners back home. And that's what really matters in this game, isn't it? So he does complete the charge move, though, because obviously you continue the charge when the enemy flees. So he goes off the table as well. So he's not going to get shot next turn. And the Phoenix over here charges the gyrocopter. The wizard comes back on and is able to give himself an extra move with Arcane Urgency spell, so he's able to then land out of line of sight of one of the organ guns, which is hopefully for him going to keep him alive, and also out of range of the Trollhammer Torpedo, who can no longer see as well. So he also drops a pillar of fire there, so it can plop through my units and maybe kill the miners next turn. At the start of my turn, that'll move. And the gyrocopter takes a wound. So Ruggy says, Gigacopter, just dogfighting a giant bird and some horses, no problem. Yeah, the gyrocopter's not supposed to be doing this. It's supposed to be garbage at fighting. Every time I've charged anything with it before, it's lost to War Machine crew before. Been killed by War Machine crew in a previous tournament. So I don't know what's going on here. It's doing great work though. So turn 6 for me. So I've got 1 chance to bring down a dragon and bring the score close. The Vortex kills a miner and they run away in this direction, but they're not dead, but they will be fleeing at the end of the game, so they get good points for that. The organ gun unleashes, does another wound to the dragon, and that's all I can do. So end of the game, and the gyrocopter does end up getting killed by the Phoenix, but I think he did more than his fair share. So that's the final shot of the game. I lost a fair amount of stuff, but there's a decent amount still alive as well. I think if I'd gone wide and just set up in my usual way, I think everything would have been killed, because there's too much fast stuff that would have got round me, would have got into the organ guns and killed everything. I think this hybrid corner camp strategy that gave the opponent some incentive to attack one of my units and bring them into range to be shot. But I think maybe the balance was slightly off because the cavalry and the Frost Phoenixes didn't really feel like getting involved in the game too much. So they obviously felt that my setup was too good, so there wasn't enough incentive for them to get involved. So I think next time I would tweak this and have slightly less stuff in the corner. Because obviously you want to... The way I've described it in the past is if you're playing football or soccer for you American types, if you have control of the ball, you want to get past your opponent. They may be faster at running than you. So you want to dangle the ball in just the perfect spot where they think they can take it off you. So they try to tackle you, but then actually it's in a position where you can quickly take it back and run past them. There's a sweet spot where that exists. If you keep the ball too far away from them, they're just not going to try and tackle you. They'll just stay away, and then when you try and sprint, they'll be faster than you. If you get the ball too close to them, then they will just successfully tackle you. So you've got to get it in that sweet spot, and that's what I'm doing here, trying to find that. You've got to have enough of an incentive for the enemy to actually attack you in the first place, but you've got to be set up defensively enough so that when they do attack you, you're in a good position to fight them. If you go too far one way, you either get destroyed because you're not in a good enough position, or the enemy sees through your ruse, it's not enough bait, so they just don't attack you. You've got to find that sweet spot, and that is a difficult thing to find with the dwarves. So we're going to keep tweaking. Hopefully the Arcane Journal is coming very soon. That's what I'm hearing. So that's going to be nice. Hopefully we get some more options there. And I'm going to try out some different lists as well. I like the triple organ gun. I like running the 3 different eras of the organ gun from the different stages of the history of Warhammer. I think that's a really fun, cool concept to have on the table. 3 different weapons that are all the same rules. I think that's pretty snazzy. So I'm going to keep running that for a while, I think. I'm also going to try out bringing the bolt thrower back in at some point. I want to try hammerers and iron breakers in the same list. The miners, I don't think, have really justified their existence. They had a few decent moments, but overall I don't think they do enough. I wanted to give them a try at a tournament, though, before I really ruled them out. So they're going to come out probably to free up some points. The characters, I like the builds of all those, so I'm not going to mess with that too much. I like the rangers, obviously. The dwarf warriors do a decent job, but maybe I could get more ranged shooting instead of them. I could go with a bigger Thunderer unit or Quarrelers perhaps instead of Dwarf Warriors. If I'm going to bring Hammerers in as well as a combat choice. It's just tough to find points for everything, because the stuff I like is so expensive. The Organ Guns and the Iron Drakes, they fill up almost an entire rare section, so that's nearly 500 points on their own. And you've got to spend 500 on core. If I could spend it all on Rangers, I would. I just don't have the models to do a 40 model Ranger unit, sadly. And I'm not even sure I would, to be honest. I think that might be overkill in a Ranger unit. But we'll see. So, if you enjoy this content and you want to see an endless stream of it, just non-stop flowing of battle reports, juicy, succulent content straight into your eyes and ears via the internet, then why not pledge your entire life savings or a portion of your life savings to go straight into the Gyrocopter Fund, as Gilfos did earlier with that generous donation, which is going straight into the Gyro Fund, and I may well be ordering some gyrocopters instantly as soon as this video ends, because I want to be able to run different lists with the dwarves, not always the same thing. And yeah, why not pledge your entire life savings, or at least a significant portion of it, I would say. What are you going to use money for anyway? Food, rent, bills, those things, I would say, are way less exciting than watching dwarf battle reports. I'll take your silence as agreement on that. So, what else is coming up before we go as well? We have got, the next thing is an Age of Sigmar tournament in a couple of weeks, so there's going to be a report on that as well. That's obviously a crazy time for that game, because version 4 is coming out very soon. The next Old World tournament that I'm signed up for at the moment is actually the start of August, but there's going to be plenty of Old World between now and then as well. There's going to be battle reports. Most weeks the battle report is going to be Old World, because there's a lot of people playing that at the club at the moment, and it's obviously getting more views than other game systems on the channel right now. I've also I actually played in a Dreadball tournament, which is a sports sci-fi board game recently, so I'm going to report on that soon as well. I'm going to do some other non-battle report content also on the channel. And there is... what else is coming up? There's Kings of War tournaments coming up, more Age of Sigmar, more Old World. And I'm going to do a video on the tournaments that I ran as well. I ran a Dead Zone and a Kings of War event back-to-back over a weekend, so I'm going to do a video talking about that and the concept of running events and tips for people running their own events, perhaps. I think that would be good. And other than that, if you join the Facebook group in the description or follow me on Twitter or join the Discord server, you'll see all the stuff that's coming up, all the painted models that I'm working on as well in there, and you can post your own stuff as well, which we like to see. And other than that, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for the donation as well, straight into the Gyrocopter Fund, and I'm going to head off and see if I can order some gyrocopters, because that's going to be a totally different list I can put together with those bad boys in there. And other than that, let me know in the comments what you thought of this video, what you thought of the list, whether you like the triple organ gun, which is your favourite organ gun of the three as well, which era of organ gun is your favourite model, and at this point in the evening, all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.